and no point in my recent memory has a Cinderella ever taken their run to cut down the nets. At no point. Cinderella stories help give March Madness its unpredictable nature. I totally get that. I do. I get that. People like wild stories. People like upsets. But on this Friday, I have a theory. My theory is that the Cinderellas were made by God, or whoever made the Cinderellas, to please the casual basketball fan. Again, my theory is that the Cinderellas were made to please the casual basketball or sports fan, plain and simple. Welcome into Wire to Wire. I'm Cole Bryson. Diesel is on vacay today, so I am riding solo with you. Good to see 25 of you already on the live stream where you can watch the show. Kane, it is good to see you, even though you have your Armada Elitist title and are already throwing shade at the Tolos. Our Tolos aren't going to stand for that. Mad Therapy says, PSH. I don't know what PSH means, Madcraft, so a little bit more context there. JD already in the stream as well says Tolo. Tolo to you, JD. That stands for Turn It On, Leave It On. Welcome into the show. Stephen Webb, what's up, man? Good to see you on the Facebook stream as well. You, Tolos out there, can text or call the show. The phone lines are open. I want to hear from you at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. Phone lines are open right now. The Hub City Spartanburgers text line is also open at 844-326-3663. Mad Therapy says, Tolo Mad knows ball. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. So I want to hear from you, Tolos, on this. Again, if you just tuned in, my theory on this Friday is that Cinderellas were made, again, I'm speaking this hypothetically, right, to please the casual basketball fan out there, plain and simple. Very, very simple statement. JD on the YouTube stream says, we all love a Cinderella story, and March Madness is a one-game elimination. That's why it's one of the best sporting events of the year. So I'm glad you brought that up, JD, because I kind of want to expand on what you just said and the rest of my notes here that I have for this segment. Because I agree with you. I enjoy, even as a basketball fan, I do enjoy the neat stories. I enjoy the Loyola Chicagos and the VCUs reaching territory that they have never reached before. I enjoy that. I will admit that. But I am also here to tell you that JD and the rest of the Tolos out there on this Friday afternoon, a beautiful Friday, by the way. I mean, come on. I'm here to tell you that I haven't had a single problem with this tournament. I haven't had one single problem with the tournament. And I know you say, well, Cole, it hasn't been March Madness. There hasn't been a lot of madness. Well, here's the deal. You want to see the best teams, or you want to see VCU and Loyola Chicago in the Final Four? Last year, the men's tournament saw the unlikely run of the number 11 seeded NC State Wolfpack. You remember that? We all do, right? NC State had a really good team and a really good run last year. They strung together 9 straight wins, including 4 in the NCAA tournament, to reach their first men's Final Four since 1983. Talking about NC State last season. The Wolfpack eventually lost to number 1 seed Purdue, but they did etch themselves into Cinderella history, right? North Carolina State is neither the first nor the last school, we think, to make some noise in March that's considered a Cinderella. Or were they? Maybe they were. Since the tournament expanded to 64 teams in 1985, there have been 6 instances in which a double-digit seed reached the Final Four. Again, I'll say that again. Since the tournament expanded to 64 teams in 1985, there have been 6 instances in which a double digit seed reached the Final Four. None of them won the title. Zero. Zero of them won the title. The lowest seed to win it all was the number 8 Villanova Wildcats in 1985. So, I understand that you and others may like the Cinderella story. That's all fine and dandy. It's a feel-good, heartwarming story. Excuse me. However, those Cinderellas don't translate to anything. The Cinderellas do not have substance. So that's why I'm here to tell you, I get that you may want to have a Cinderella upset, and you may say, well, Cole, this year's tournament didn't have as many upsets as I would have liked for it to have, but not me. I'm absolutely fine with the way the tournament was this year. I want to look back at the best Cinderella stories and see how far they made it, and also look at the list, or a list, of national champions year by year. But before we do that, let me get back to the comments, because the text line is pretty active right now, but not as active as the stream. A lot of comments in the stream already, where you can watch the show live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Just search the Fan Upstate. Let's go to the text line first. It's the Hub City Spartanburgers text line. Texter says, hey, are you guys going to be doing something for the draft? Texter, what do you mean by that? Doing what? Like a live location? Is that what you mean? Let me know. Let's see. JT and Greer text the show at 844-326-3663. JT and Greer says, we like Cinderella because we don't have a bias against them. We know the big teams and dislike them for different reasons, such as rival, conference, location, etc. I love that text, JT and Greer. I really do. I think that's a really good text. Best text so far, because it's like the only text I've read. I do love that text, though. Again, JT and Greer says we like Cinderella because we don't have a bias against them. We know the big teams. We're familiar with them. I think there's some validity to that. I really do. I like that a lot. Texter from the 860 says, Cinderellas are only good for the first weekend. Viewing was horrible for the 2014 championship between 7-seed UConn and 8-seed Kentucky. And that's a good point, Texter, because that's kind of what I'm saying. And maybe you're right. Maybe the Cinderellas on opening weekend is all people want, but do you really want the Cinderellas making a deep run? I don't. When it's all said and done, I think the Final Four that we're going to get tomorrow features great matchups, probably the best 4 teams in college basketball, right? And we can't sit here and say, oh, the committee got it right, because the committee, they let 64 teams in, for crying out loud. We just had a heavy run of the 1 seeds. Texter from the 3-4. Oh, this is JD on the text line, the Hub City Spartanburgers text line. JD says Cole is fine with how the tournament played out, except for that whole Clemson losing to McNeese thing. I don't know, JD. I wasn't really upset by that, if that's what you're asking or insinuating. Clemson never deserved to win that game. Even late in the game, JD, when they got really close and brought it back, they didn't deserve the win. You can't score, they scored 12 points in the first half, something like that. You can't score that. You can't score 12 points in the first half and expect to win. So, all right, let's go to the stream and get a few of those comments before I get back to the point. Let's see here. Kane on the YouTube stream says the name will be changed after Final Four. It'll be a gloating name if I'm at the top of the bracket leaderboard. If not, it'll be a Pro Tolo name. Oh, I got you. He's going to change his name in the ESPN March Madness. We'll have to look at those standings here in a second, Kane, to see who's making up the top 10 right now. JD says, yeah, 0 issues with the tournament either. Kane says, been a fantastic tournament. Going to be a good old-fashioned barn burner with the best teams going at it. And I agree with that, Kane, tomorrow. 2 good games. I'm hoping we get 2 really good games. No blowouts. I don't want any blowouts. Matt says, what was the big-name fella that played for NC State? That was, as JD said, DJ Burns. Good to see Tiger Stripes Media in the YouTube stream as well. Brandon on Facebook says, how about those Braves? No loss and no positive test yesterday. I count that as a win. Yeah, Brandon, I'll take that. I'll take that as a win. We need all the wins we can get right now, right? Need all the wins we can get. But let's go look back. Oh, and by the way, in about 10 minutes from now, we are going to go from Greenville, South Carolina to Tampa, Florida, where we'll be joined by Chase Justice of WYFF4. He is live in Tampa covering the Gamecocks, the Lady Gamecocks tonight. Final Four action, South Carolina versus Texas. We'll talk about that a lot as well today on the show. But I go back to a list of the best Cinderellas in March Madness. I mean, you go to 2006. You see George Mason. They lost in the Final Four to Florida. You go to 2008. Davidson Wildcats. Know who played for that team in 2008? Their finish, they lost in the Elite Eight to the number 1 Kansas Jayhawks. By the way, Tolo, see if you can know. I mean, see if you can tell me who was on that Davidson team. The Wildcats entered that season, or entered that tournament rather, on a 22-game win streak, and they were still the 10 seed. Again, they came into the tournament on a 22-game win streak, and they came in as a 10 seed. Curry, by the way, just so you're not out there scratching your head all day. In 4 games, Curry averaged 32 points and shot 44% from deep. Curry became the 4th player ever to score 30 points in his first 4 tournament games. And that game they lost to Kansas, man, in the Elite Eight, it was 59-57. So Davidson absolutely held their own there. 2011, VCU. We all remember VCU in 2011, right? They beat the Trojans of Southern Cal. They beat Georgetown, Purdue, Florida State, knocked off number 1 Kansas. They lost in the Final Four against Butler, the Butler Bulldogs. 2013, Florida Gulf Coast Eagles. They defeated Georgetown and San Diego State, lost in the Sweet 16 to Florida. And then we all remember pretty recently, 2018, Loyola Chicago. They defeated Miami, Tennessee, Nevada, and Kansas State, lost in the Final Four to Michigan. That was Sister Jean, right? Sister Jean. 2022, St. Peter's, they defeated Kentucky, Murray State, Purdue. Ended up losing in the Elite Eight to North Carolina. And of those that I just read off to you, how many of those Cinderella stories ended with that team holding the trophy? Texters, Tolos. 0. 0 is the answer. 0. So I go back to my original question that I asked about 15 minutes ago. Why do we like Cinderellas in the tournament? Why? Do we only like Cinderellas so that March Madness can be a sport watched by the entire country and not just basketball fans, similar to the Super Bowl, right? The Super Bowl attracts people from all over the world who haven't watched a game of football since last year's Super Bowl. But if you ask me, I'll tell you that I'll take this year's tournament over tournaments of the past, where a Cinderella made a deep run. That's nice. They made it to the Sweet 16. That's nice. They made it to the Elite Eight or the Final Four. But what'd they do when it was all said and done? They didn't win. It doesn't happen. Cinderellas do not win at all. 2024, 2023 was both won by UConn. Kansas won it in 22. Baylor won it in 21. There was no tournament in 20. It was canceled due to COVID. Remember that? Virginia won it in 19. Villanova in 18. North Carolina in 17. Villanova again in 16. Duke in 15. That's their last one. And then you go UConn, Louisville, Kentucky, UConn, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Florida twice. North Carolina again, Connecticut again, Syracuse, Maryland, Duke, Michigan State, Tom Izzo in 2000. So that's my whole point. The Cinderellas don't win at all. I don't mind seeing a Cinderella with a win or two in the early part of the tournament. I prefer it to be just one, to be honest with you, because I'd rather see the best teams in the tournament, especially down the stretch. But Cinderellas, again, they're not made of substance. They don't last. They don't win the tournament. They don't have a history of actually getting the job done. That's why I ask, why? Why do we like the Cinderellas? Texter says Clemson gets 2 huge commitments in basketball. Texter, you're right. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show. Let's see here. I believe this comes from the 923. Texter says the postseason is meant for the best teams only, MENT. I think you left out an A there, Texter. No one wants to watch 2 teams we good and well that won't make the tournament for another 20 years in the championship game. Oh, that came from Dewey. Now we understand why the A was left out. Thanks for texting the show, Dewey, on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line. Let's see here. Matt Therapy on the YouTube stream. Before we run to a break, let's get a few more comments in. Matt Therapy says, so it would be fair to say you consider most schools having a 0% chance of winning since most would be considered Cinderellas. No, most schools aren't considered Cinderellas. How many Cinderellas make a deep run? Is that what am I missing? Am I missing what you were saying there, Matt? Let me know. Let's see. Brandon says there's nothing like seeing a team you hate losing to a no-name college when it counts. And I guess, Brandon, that's probably the validity of the argument with Cinderellas. Like, or let's say, for example, when Cal was still at Kentucky and they lost in 2018 or whatever it was, I can't remember exactly what year. To your point, yes, a lot of people hate Kentucky. And a texter brought that point up earlier in the show, and I think you both are right. The positive of the Cinderellas is if you have a little animosity toward a blue blood program like a Kentucky or a Duke or a North Carolina or a Syracuse, seeing a Cinderella knock them off, it's fun. I get that. It is a lot of fun seeing them lose. But when you fast forward to April 4th, 2025, and tomorrow you're sitting at home watching the Final Four, would you rather see Auburn versus Florida and Duke versus Houston, or would you rather see Auburn versus VCU? You tell me. Because, like I said, I'll take what we have this year, hands down, all day, every day, and even on Sundays. We go to Tampa, Florida in the very next segment as we're joined by Chase Justice of WYFF4 to talk a little Lady Gamecocks Final Four for the women. South Carolina tonight, 7 p.m. We'll be joined by Chase next. Let's talk a little Lady Gamecocks on this Friday. I mean, it'd be stupid if we didn't, but we go to Tampa, Florida, where we bring in Chase Justice, good friend of the show. We've had him on before, of WYFF4 here in the upstate. Chase, is the weather in Tampa? I mean, come on. I know you're probably bragging to your friends back home, but we've got 84, 85 here in the upstate today, so not too much bragging from you. Is that right?
I mean, I know 84 sounds good. It has been mid-90s here all week. It feels like summer down in the Sunshine State. And comparatively, this time last year, we went from Albany to Cleveland. It was snow, sleet, and rain heading into the Final Four. It's been nothing but sunshine and good weather from Birmingham down to Tampa. Man, no complaints from the Sunshine State.
Sunshine and good weather, hopefully sunshine and good vibes from the Lady Gamecocks. How much going into today's matchup have you been able to see them and shoot around, talk to them, talk to Dawn Staley?
So we were able to catch about 10, 15 minutes of each team during open practice, including South Carolina. That was yesterday morning from about 9 to 9:30. They had us in here bright and early getting ready for the weekend. We were able to get a lot of access with the team through a portion of open locker room. That ran for about 30 minutes, and we got to talk to all of the key players up on the podium, from Bree Hall, Sanaya Fagan, Raven Johnson. Those three come to mind because those three are trying to become the first three-time national champs in school history. That's one of my favorite storylines heading into the weekend. But this team, they just feel loose, and it's a little bit different compared to this time last year where they were undefeated. And I've talked to some of the ladies on the team. Everybody was on edge last year. They could feel that pressure weighing them down a little bit because they wanted to be a wire-to-wire undefeated team and win that national championship. This time around, they have some blemishes on their schedule, but 3 losses. I think at this point they're 32, 33-3. So it's a wonderful team, and I think they are really excited for the task at hand.
Chase, a lot of times people make a big deal, maybe rightfully so, about teams being there before, right? Having been there. Mm-hmm. South Carolina certainly has been there 5 times in a row now for Dawn Staley. Do you sense that when you watch them practice, shoot around, talk to them? Do you sense that there's a sense of calmness, I guess, because South Carolina has been there?
Absolutely. I do sense that. And we talked to Malaysia Fulwiley yesterday, and she kind of likened this experience to getting ready for the first day of school back in high school, where they know the feeling, they know what the stage and the bright lights are like, and they are just excited to get out there and hopefully get some shots going in the first couple of minutes. And comparatively on the other end, Texas, this is their first appearance in the Final Four since 2003. So 22 years where they don't really have this level of experience. Of course, their head coach, Vic Schaefer, has been at this stage before. Him and Dawn Staley met in the 2017 national championship game when he was the head coach at Mississippi State. I think we both know how that game ended. South Carolina was able to get the W there. But as far as everybody else is concerned, you do feel like South Carolina is comfortable in this stage. They're comfortable with who they are as a team, and they have been tested. They had to get past a 4-point win against Maryland and a 4-point win against Duke in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 just to get to this point. So I think they're really relishing at the opportunity to go out and compete in the Final Four.
Hey, Chase, a little fun question here. If South Carolina does take care of business tonight, is Tampa closer to Columbia or is Tampa closer to Austin? I'm just trying to figure out what the Vic Schaefer excuses might be.
I think Tampa's a little bit closer to Columbia, and that's one thing. Vic Schaefer, I feel like him and Dawn Staley, they respect one another very well. They speak glowingly about each other. They seem like they might have a little bit of a friendship going on off the court, but Dawn Staley has absolutely dominated that one-on-one matchup. I believe 15-4 all-time against Coach Schaefer, 9-0 or 7-0 in the postseason, has never lost to him in the NCAA tournament. So it's kind of a bit of a little bro type of deal, if I do say so myself.
What has Coach Staley said, Chase? What have the players said, if anything, just with this matchup tonight against Texas, it being the, 4th time this season these two teams have played?
Yes, it will be the 4th time they have played. So neither team is going to surprise the other with anything they're going to be able to throw out on the court. One sentiment that's been echoed by just about every single player in South Carolina's locker room is they need to be the team that comes out and punches first. They know what they're getting into against the game, against Texas, against the Vic Schaefer coach team. It's going to be physical through and through against the Texas Longhorns. Texas has the size advantage, But as we spoke about just a couple minutes ago, South Carolina certainly has the experience on their end. So it's all about punching first in this matchup. And I think the one thing all eyes are going to be on this time around is Madison Booker, the two-time All-American for Texas, versus Bree Hall, who always her task is to lock down the opposing team's best player. She's seen Booker 3 times this season alone. In the one game that Texas was able to beat South Carolina, Booker went for 20+. The other 2 games, she was held to 10 or less points. So that is going to be the one matchup that I think everybody's keying on. If Breezy can shut down Booker, it kind of has a ring of a heavyweight matchup. If she can accomplish that, I think it's going to be South Carolina rolling tonight.
You know, it could be. I think late in maybe midway through the third quarter in Greenville is when South Carolina started pulling away from Texas in the SEC championship on that Sunday. You talk about that matchup. What about Malaysia Fulwiley? I mean, you know, nobody questions Dawn Staley's rotation and adjustments, but she's someone that does come off the bench, and when she does, boy, it's a spark plug for the entire team. You've seen her in practice. You've seen her live in games as well. She's got to be, soaking this in. Second year with South Carolina. You mentioned what she was last year and how good she was last year as well. You would think a player like her might have a little bit of chip on her shoulder, even though she has been in this moment.
Absolutely. And she is one of the most polarizing women's basketball players I've ever seen in my life. And speaking to some of the other ladies on the team, when they talk about Malaysia Fulwiley, I'm pretty sure it was Raven Johnson that says she does stuff on the court that only men can do in most senses. So if she can get going in this game, it is going to be really tough to shut down South Carolina. But on the flip side, if those shots aren't falling early, we saw in the Elite Eight, I mean, this team is so multiple and so deep. If she's not on, Dawn Staley isn't scared to toss her on the bench for even an entire quarter. Yeah. So the offense, certainly when she is on the floor, it runs through Malaysia. She's the one that is the most dynamic scorer on the team. So this team, especially if they can get past Texas and into Sunday, I think Malaysia, it goes about as far as she will take them.
Will it be in the fourth matchup, Chase? Has there been anything said from South Carolina, whether it be players or coaches, in terms of what they might try to do different? I mean, these two teams know each other pretty well at this point.
I think it's going to be – I haven't gotten the sense that either team is going to throw anything crazy out at the other team. I think it's really just both teams trying to impose their will and play their style of basketball. But we did get the chance to speak to some ESPN talent yesterday, talk to them about the game. We spoke to Rebecca Lobo, who's going to be on the call tonight, Carolyn Peck, who has been on the call, I believe, every single game that South Carolina has been in the tournament up to this point. And they both said in the fourth time playing against one another, liken it to in the WNBA when you're in the championship game, it's tough. And sometimes it doesn't equate to the most fun brand of basketball from a fan sense. Both of those women kind of gave me the sense that this is probably going to be a low-scoring game. Don't expect anything too flashy, any points to be in the 70s, even 80s. They both kind of said if it's a 40 to 45 game in the fourth quarter with time winding down, that's about what they're expecting out of this one.
Chase, what about Chloe Kitts? Chloe Kitts is always a different player to me in every single few minutes of every game. What I mean by that is not calling her inconsistent, but at times this year she has found herself going a couple of quarters without finding points. She's averaging 10 a game. Now, you go back to the SEC tournament, a couple of those games, Chloe Kitts was the catalyst in the fourth quarter that was able to bring things home for the Gamecocks. What has she said leading into this game that really makes you and other South Carolina Gamecock fans out there believe that if she shows up once again like she did in Greenville, that tonight could be similar to what happened on that Sunday in Greenville?
I think Chloe Kitts has a newfound confidence about her, and I spoke to her about that in Birmingham last weekend. And she said that after the UConn game, which I think she had 6 points, 4 rebounds in that game, it wasn't a total wash, but they lost to UConn by close to 30 points. They ran them out of Colonial Life Arena. She said after that game, she gathered her team up and apologized to each player individually and said, hey, look, this loss is on me. I'm going to turn a page at this point. This is going to be a different Chloe Kitts. And I think that's exactly what we've seen down the stretch. She has turned into one of the most dynamic scorers on this team. She's been a bully down low. If she can get to a double-double, which she's done in, I believe, 7 of the past 13 or 14 games, she's been on a heater as of late. Chloe Kitts is a tough player to stop, and especially when you're as multiple as you are on defense. They can take her out. They can put fresh legs in the third and fourth quarter. It's not like she's going to have to play the entirety of the game and be gassed going into the fourth quarter. So just the rotation and the players that they can put in and out, it kind of complements Chloe's game. And if she can get to the foul line a couple times, we can see if she can knock down some shots there too.
Chase, has there been anything said about South Carolina's path to get here? Because when the tournament was announced, Dawn Staley was a little bit upset about not being the number one overall seed. However, from my standpoint, in my opinion, they definitely got the best draw. UConn's on the other side of the bracket, UCLA on the other side of the bracket, LSU on the other side of the bracket. I just wonder if now that Dawn has played the games that she's played, no offense to the Dukes of the world and the teams that South Carolina has played, but if she's said anything and commented on their path that maybe might have been a little easier.
I don't think so. She hasn't said anything of the sort, at least to us at this point. But like you said, I don't think many fans and many players outside of their locker room, they knew what they were getting into in Birmingham. But I don't think many fans outside the locker room were expecting as close of games as South Carolina got. I mean, even dating back to the round of 32 against Indiana, that game was close up until the third or fourth quarter. So South Carolina certainly battle-tested at this point in the tournament. And when you look around at the other three teams, including Texas, that are left in the Final Four alongside South Carolina, all three teams that South Carolina has lost to this season. So no easy wins at this point in the tournament. But, I mean, as far as the road to the title goes, when you take a step back and look at it, you do think that South Carolina got a bit of a favorable draw, at least up to this point. But now round 4 against Texas, it's hard to beat a team twice. We're going to have to see if South Carolina can beat them 3 times this season.
Chase, you mentioned Booker on the Longhorns team, a phenomenal player. Do you get the sense that Booker tonight, with South Carolina's depth, that Booker almost has to go on I don't want to say an all-time great performance, but that Booker, that the weight really is on her shoulders more than it is in any other game, because Texas just doesn't have, no team has the depth that South Carolina has.
Certainly. And I will go out and say, I think Booker is going to have a legacy game, 20, 25 plus, if they hope to shut down South Carolina. That's what it took a couple of years ago when South Carolina lost to Iowa at this stage. It took Caitlin Clark showing up and just being the most dominant player on the court, hands down. So if Booker's getting her shots up and she is finding them to fall, that's going to be something that could give South Carolina some issues, because as dominant and as deep as the Gamecocks are, the one thing that I've kind of pointed to down the stretch is when they need a bucket, they have so many good players that are able to take open shots, but they don't really have one player individually, unless Fool Wiley is on and she's knocking down threes, that they will force feed the ball to and say, look, you have to bail us out. You have to give us a shot. It was Joyce Edwards throughout a majority of the regular season, but we've seen her kind of take a backseat in the tournament, which for an 18-year-old true freshman, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. But for Madison Booker, 2-time All-American, first-team All-American this season, it is going to start and end with her as far as the Texas Longhorns tournament hopes are concerned.
Chase, what do you think happens tonight?
I'm leaning South Carolina. I think both teams, like we spoke about, they know what they're getting into in this matchup. I do think it's going to be a low-scoring game, like LaBrecca Lobo and Carolyn Peck kind of hinted at. I'm sensing a low-scoring game, but I think if South Carolina can play their brand of basketball, wear the other team down, consistently have fresh legs on the court, I get the sense that South Carolina can win a bit of a knockdown, drag-out, but I think 4 to 8 points is that sweet spot where I think South Carolina is able to get it done. If they get to the national championship game, that's a different story. UCLA and UConn, they are two totally different brands of basketball, but UCLA's big. I mean, we saw her at the Naismith Player of the Year Awards. She's 6'8", 6'9". She's taller than Camila Cardoso. She's a handful down low. If it's UConn, Paige Beckers is on an all-time tear as of late, kind of similar to what we saw with Caitlin Clark a couple of years ago. But I think tonight, South Carolina certainly has the upper hand against Texas.
And then, Chase, for those listening in the upstate, where can they see you tonight on their television set, either before or after the game concludes?
You can see myself alongside our weekend sports anchor, Julia Morris, every half hour tonight on WYFF News 4, your local NBC station in the upstate. And you can check out our social media. We'll have plenty of content coming from Dawn Staley, all the ladies on the team after the game. And you can shout me out with at Chase Justice TV on X or Twitter.
Chase, always appreciate you, man. Have a blast tonight.
Thank you very much, Cole.
Chase Justice, WYFF4, live from Tampa, Florida, bringing you the sights and sounds of what's happening, of what's going on with the South Carolina Lady Gamecocks. Fantastic stuff there. A little bit jealous of Chase being down there in the Sunshine State, but great insight. I'm excited. We're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth as well. And you know what? I think he's right. I think I agree. I think South Carolina in a slugfest tonight, kind of two heavyweights going at it, low scoring, gritty, in my opinion. It certainly was that for the first half in the first matchup in Greenville, but South Carolina pulled away. And that fourth quarter really wasn't that close. I don't know if it'll be that tonight. Maybe it's a little bit closer down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Obviously, South Carolina would hope it would be similar to what happened in Greenville. But I think right now I'm leaning South Carolina as well. I believe the Gamecocks favored by most books at 5.5 points. So we'll continue to talk about that as well. A little Braves conversation for you next. Freddie Freeman still not in the lineup tonight for the Dodgers because of his shower incident. That's next. No Diesel today. He is on a little vacation on this Friday. It was a beautiful Friday, man. Looking out the window, it looks like it's gotten pretty cloudy now, though. Still a beautiful day in the upstate, up in the, 70s? Close to, is it 80 outside? Am I missing that? Is it already in the 80s? A fantastic, I think it's supposed to be pretty tomorrow, too. Expecting some rain on Sunday, I do believe. But I believe another pretty day in store for those tomorrow, heading to Clemson for the orange and white. I about said orange and white spring game at 1 o'clock in Death Valley. But I don't know for you Tolos out there what the most embarrassing way you've ever been injured before has been. But Los Angeles Dodgers first baseman Freddie Freeman, obviously still some animosity from some Braves fans toward Freddie. He slipped and fell in the shower Sunday morning. He was put on the injured list for his ankle injury. And the move is retroactive to Monday. He hasn't played since Saturday. He's 3 for 12 this season, 2 home runs and 4 RBIs. The incident happened at home during the Dodgers' day off. Freeman's wife had to drive him to Dodgers' day. I mean, talk about embarrassing. Your wife having to drop you off like you're going to school for his 3-hour treatment session where the trainer, I'm sure, was asking, what happened to you? Well, I fell in the shower. An x-ray showed no serious damage. He did sprain his right ankle on a play at first base in late September last year. Struggled in the first 2 rounds of the postseason, and then we all know how the World Series went for him last year. But we'll see. Even though he's a Dodger, we still hope the best for Freddie. We also hope the best for the Atlanta Braves, who, as someone pointed out earlier in the show, I think it was Brandon, we had a win yesterday. No, the Braves didn't win. The win was the Braves didn't lose, and nobody got popped for 80 games, right? Braves back in action tonight at home. The 0-7 Braves, might I add, against the Marlins, who have had a pretty good start to the season, man. Marlins 4-3 on the season. And then looking at the pitching matchup tonight, it's going to be Spencer Schwellenbach for Atlanta versus Max Meyer, 1.59 ERA. Is only 5.2 innings pitched. Schwellenbach 6 innings pitched thus far this season. So we'll see. I think the Atlanta Braves do have again, this I might sound like an idiot. I do think the Braves have a shot tonight against the Marlins. I mean, I go back to my roulette theory. I don't know if you like to play roulette or not, but you know, if that sucker lands on black 6 or 7 times in a row, you better bet red, because it's not going to keep landing on black, right? A black number. So eventually you bet red just because it's hit black 5, 6, 7, 8 times in a row. Same thing with the Braves. They've sucked 6, 7, 8 times in a row now. 0-7. You got to bet them. You got to bet them. You got to pick them, because sooner or later they'll win, right? Will they? Will they? You would think so. A little baseball action for you happening right now. The Tigers lead the White Sox 7-1. The Red Sox lead the Cardinals in the bottom of the 5th, 6-5. By the way, that Tigers White Sox game at the top of the 8th. Cardinals Red Sox bottom of the 5th, 6-5 lead for the Red Sox. The Cubs are defeating the Padres. How about that? The Cubs can beat the Padres, or for now they're beating the Padres, but the Braves can't. Padres 7-0 on the season. Cubs 5-4. They do hold a 3-1 lead in the bottom of the 5th inning. Top of the 2nd, New York, the Mets, they lead the Blue Jays 2-0 right now. And again, just top of the 2nd, so still some time there. And still a few more games this afternoon for you. Athletics, Rockies, that'll be a doozy. Yankees, Pirates tonight. Mariners, Giants, Diamondbacks, Nationals, Dodgers, Phillies. That should be a really good game there. Dodgers and Phillies. Marlins, Braves, as I mentioned, at 7:15. 7:40, Orioles versus the Royals. Rays, Rangers at 8:05. Reds, Brewers at 8:10. And Guardians versus the Angels at 9:30. I mean, that's fitting, right? The Guardian Angel. I don't know if that was done on purpose this weekend, but 9:38 tonight. I don't know, man. I think the Braves, Like, the Marlins are a good team, but I think the Braves get a win this weekend, maybe two. Like, I know that seems like asking for a lot right now at this point in the season, but I do think, as upset and frustrated as I was all week, I do think the Braves are still going to, I don't want to say turn it on, but let's be honest, they can't get much worse. I mean, your best players are barely hitting over 100 right now, so you can't get much worse. But I do. I think the Braves, you know what? I might pick the Braves tonight. I might pick them tonight over the Marlins with Schwellenbach. I mean, this team, they're not good. They're 0-7, but you know what you can say? You can say they're battle-tested, right? I mean, who had a more difficult 0-7 or a more difficult 7-game stretch to open the season than the Atlanta Braves did opening on the West Coast? Madcraft or Matt Therapy on the stream says, LOL. Matt Therapy, we need some context there. What are you laughing at? It helps when you put context. That way people can know what it is that you're talking about. So I'm going to go with the Braves tonight over the Marlins. Who did I say was pitching for the Marlins tonight? Did I say that already? Max Meyer. Okay, Max Meyer for Miami. Yeah, I like that matchup. Ozzie Albies leading the team right now. Listen to this. This is your bright spot. Ozzie Albies leading the team in batting average. 185. Hitting 185 is Ozzie. Oh, no, I said that wrong. Marcell Ozuna, I apologize. Ozuna is hitting 188. So how dare I get that one wrong, because they're both under, everybody's below 200 right now. But in the very next segment, actually, for the very next hour, we're going to be joined by a very, very special guest on the show. You hear him on Friday nights during the fall with me doing Burns football. Lane Fowler, he's the head boys basketball coach at Burns. He joins us from 4 to 5 to talk March Madness, Final Four, transfer portal. That's right, I'm bringing an expert basketball mind in to make you and I a little bit smarter. That's next. Hour number 2 of the show on this beautiful Friday afternoon, rolling along. So glad you could be with us on this program. 3 more hours to go. Turn it on and leave it on until 7 p.m. tonight. And get ready for the Lady Gamecocks at 7 o'clock. First game tonight with a little women's Final Four. But let's talk a little basketball with someone you've heard on the station before, Lane Fowler. He is the head boys basketball coach at Burns. He also serves as the color commentator alongside myself, which you probably enjoy more than coaching basketball, right? I mean, that's the title that you put your claim to fame to. We're going to talk a little March Madness. South Carolina, Clemson Clemson had some big pickups today for men's and women's. A little Portal and Cooper Flag, Duke, and you name it. Maybe even some Braves. You want to start with that? Get that out of the way. You resident Braves fan. Do the Braves get a win tonight, Lane Fowler?
It's time. I mean, I go down about twice a summer, and it's been a little bit difficult. Some different injuries and different things happening, but you got to always have faith in the Braves, man. They'll get it fixed.
I hope you're right. I really do, because we've been pretty hard on them this week. Pretty hard on the Braves this week. But let's start with Clemson and South Carolina. Obviously, you as the head coach at Burns, you have a lot of involvement with colleges, recruiting your players, and on a year in and year out basis. We'll get to the transfer portal in a second, but what a season it was for Clemson. We'll start with Clemson. Were you surprised at all to see them just absolutely lay an egg in the first? 12 points I believe it was in the first half against McNeese. I was pretty hard on Brownell and the team. I mean, I don't think it's completely Brownell's fault for having 12 points on the scoreboard in the first half. But what was your reaction to the first half? Because they were good in the second half.
Yeah, I love Coach Brownell and his staff. I've developed a good relationship with them through the years. I got to see 2 of their last 10 games at home. I got to see the Duke game with my son Colt.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal win. One of Duke's only 3 losses on the year, 4 losses. They played really well that night, and then I got to see the Virginia Tech game, obviously knowing Coach Young and Coach Giltner over at Virginia Tech from their days at Wofford. But I was disappointed. I mean, I was disappointed. It just that they seem to be playing very tentative. I think that's probably an understatement. They were tentative in that game, and Coach Brownell and Coach Bender and that whole staff, man, they had those guys ready. It just sometimes it doesn't look like that, and I'm probably sound like a coach as far as taking up for the coaches, but basketball to me is a player's game. I wouldn't coach if I didn't think coach was important, but obviously, McNeese presented some different problems with their length, with their athleticism. I thought when Louisville beat Clemson twice this year, I thought they presented those same challenges and problems. Also, they shot the 3 really well.
Sure.
Clemson just couldn't knock anything down early. They couldn't get it going. And, good gracious, those last 7 or 8 minutes, I mean, they scored 24 points in the last 3 minutes of the game.
Sure.
But it was just such a sense of urgency at that point, and the urgency wasn't there before, and that's the beauty of the tournament. It is one and done. I do think that's one of the reasons, as a country, we've always just had such a loving of that tournament. Yeah. And, I just hate it because I do think last year with Girardi and PJ and Ian Shefflin and all those guys, they had a right mixture. This year, I think for probably a good solid 15 games, that was there as well. They just couldn't get it going in that game.
So I said probably 3 to 4 weeks leading it, maybe 2 to 3 weeks leading into the tournament. My take was that I love the team. Obviously, the Dylan Hunter injury was a big loss. But I said a couple of weeks before the tournament on the radio on this show, I said that if Clemson runs into a team in the tournament that has a guy off the bench go for 15, it's going to be a problem because Clemson's depth just – they don't have the depth. So when you look at what happened against McNeese from a coach's standpoint, I defended Brownell from the aspect of the first half of, the players just – I know he's got to have them ready. There's no doubt about that. It's his job to have the team ready. But from a coaching standpoint, when you show up or don't show up in the first half and only put 12 points on the board, is that more on Brownell there?
Again, I'm defending the coach, but, he did say something in his second media timeout live on air or, recorded right there on air. But he said that McNeese, Coach Wade, came out and did a little more matchup zone than they had seen all year. Matter of fact, he had not seen Coach Wade do a matchup zone the entire year. And so that threw Clemson off a little bit. But, again, he's seen it throughout the year with different teams. Did they prepare for it? I would say very little going into that game.
I want to ask you about that. I want to stop you.
Mm-hmm.
I heard in the first 2 days of the tournament, Thursday and Friday, I heard 3 different coaches talk about not being ready for the matchup zone, not just Brunell. From a basketball standpoint, you played a lot of teams, a lot of games,
30
right?
games.
30 some odd games where you do get a little zones. I know basketball now, college level, at most levels, it's man to man. But teams do play zone. So why, in your mind, are teams because that's what makes the tournament so great, the beauty of it, right? But that Thursday and Friday, don't you practice against zone?
You do, but it's let's just say a typical late in the season. They trim their practices down. It's a little more video. It's a little more skill work, and then you trim your practice. Let's say a 2-hour practice preseason or 2.5-hour preseason to 2 in the season. To the last month of the year, it's probably more like an hour and 15. I know that from playing in college. I know that from talking to college coaches. I would say, on the team offensive side, they might have. And this is speculating, but I would say they probably spent 10% of their team offense, 15%. Going against it. And again, you're like, well, why would you not be prepared? Well, they've seen matchups throughout the year. They know they can get a guy in the high post, send some cutters through there and get what they want. I think McNeese had such a fear of their, the high-low game that Clemson got with Chef, big, what's big man? I just forgot his last name. Locken, had a great year as a transfer from Cincinnati. But I think they were so worried about that. Hunter and those guys were, getting freed up, from a lot of that high-low action. But it definitely stumped them. They just weren't getting the cutters through there. And then when you rely on that 3-ball as much as they do, or as much as they did in that first half, and it's not going down, you can just see
you die by
it starts. There's a decompression there. You just start, and then McNeese starts getting more confident. So I do believe they practiced for it. I would never – Brad Brownell, I think this year – to not have some of the guys. Now, he did, obviously, with transfer, do a good job right there. But when you lose PJ and you lose the kid from Syracuse last year, Girardi, there's a big hole there. They filled it. I do think they exceeded expectations for a lot of the year, but it just wasn't there in that first round. If they win that first-round game, honestly, I think they're a Sweet 16 type of team, and maybe like last year, they made the Elite Eight, lose to Alabama right there in one of the best games ever.
I had them losing to Houston. I think in the Sweet 16. Maybe it was the Elite Eight, but I had them losing to Houston in my bracket.
Hadn't beat Purdue in the second round.
That's right. And
that would have been a good one.
It kind of a rematch from last year, right? Yeah. Lane Fowler joins us in the studio right here on the Fan Upstate. Again, if you just tuned in, Lane is the head boys basketball coach at Burns High School. You hear him on this station during the fall as he is the color commentator for Burns football with myself and Sam Clark. Let's switch over to South Carolina. Just a tough season. I asked the question on the show at one point down the stretch if South Carolina's baseball team would get a conference win before the basketball team, and that just kind of shows they didn't. By the way, the basketball team, I can't remember if Texas or whoever they beat to get their first conference win. Lamont Paris. Here's what's weird about this to me, and I want to hear your thoughts. Exceeded expectations a year ago. Had a good team, right? A really good team. However, Lane, in Lamont Paris's 3 years there, he's been in the SEC last in offense, other than 1 year where he was next to last in total team offense. So I think you and others who know Lamont and know basketball can tell you he's a fantastic coach. But in your mind, what has been the hurdle from getting them a little bit more competitive in conference?
Well, here's the deal. I've known Coach Paris, got to know him really well. One of my former players, Hayden Brown, played at the Citadel, was on Coach Paris's first team, started 22 games in his first year, and they struggled. I was shocked at their year two. I honestly think in the last 20 years, it's one of the best coaching jobs I've seen. I think our state the last couple of years might have got a little spoiled seeing how well Clemson did, and last year with South Carolina. To get to your question, they've got Auburn down this year with a minute left in the game, Florida down with a minute left in the game, Alabama less than 30 seconds. They never closed those games out.
Right.
They missed in the portal some this year. Last year, you go back and look, Talon Cooper, who played at Dorman, led went at Morehead State, went to Minnesota, led the Big Ten in assists, had a phenomenal year at South Carolina. Michie Johnson goes back to Ohio State, who's now back for year 6.
That's right, yeah.
B.J. Mack left Walford and came to South Carolina. Those 3 guys, if you go back and look, one helped win South Carolina a ton of games last year. This year, I do think guard play early in the year. They were hurt some. I just think they never got it going. I think Jacoby Wright's a good player for them. I think he's a solid player, but not necessarily maybe Talon and Michi on the scoring side or, things like that. So, Colin's an absolute stud down there with the left hand. He can do so many things, Colin Murray Bulls, but they never could. And then you factor in this year's SEC, argue or not, could have been the toughest conference in the history of NCAA college basketball. So if they had gotten any of those, I went to two of the games. Like A&M, they're tied with 40 seconds. Like there's so many games and ifs and buts. I get it, but if they had gotten one or two of those, offensively, you're right. They've got to figure some things out. But they guard you, they rebound. But last year's South Carolina team was one of the biggest shockers for me ever in year two. Now year three with only, was it 2 SEC wins for the year?
Yeah, something like close to it.
Yeah,
not many.
And so that's tough. But when you got, 14 teams out of the conference that made the tournament, was it 13 or 14? 14 this year, I think. Yeah. So, and then Arkansas is a 13 seed and makes it, 2 rounds into the tournament, 3 rounds.
So here's what I look at with them. SEC, to your point, they were loaded. The SEC has great guard play, especially guard depth. I didn't see – tell me if I'm wrong, and feel free to – I didn't see guard depth. I didn't see much depth for South Carolina. Talking about closing out games, you're right. They were in a lot of them, especially I remember the Auburn game. I mean, they had that one, pretty much wrapped up. But the guard depth just didn't seem – in a conference loaded with guard depth, didn't seem like it was close. And maybe that's just missing, like you talked about in the portal a little bit.
Yeah, and they're already addressing it. They've signed a couple guys, already. A couple guys are in the portal for them. The portal, I know we'll get to that. It's a different beast. But I do think, to your point, Cole, you've got – you look at not only these Final Four teams, which have incredible guard play, but the teams in the SEC that kept succeeding and winning those tough, close games. The ball is in the hands of guards in the last 5 seconds of that shot clock so many times in those 1 or 2 possession games, basically every time. So it's harder to get that ball to your best player. Their best player by far is Colin Murray Bulls. You can get him the ball, but a lot of times with him being right now not a outside player, not a big-time shooter, he can score it, he can pass it, he can rebound it. But, again, it makes it very difficult. Talon last year had that ball in his hands all the time, and he always had Michi. And Michi could win you a game, he could lose you a game, but there was a lot of nights he'd hit 6, 7 threes in big moments. Yeah, we had a texter bring this up earlier. I did want to get to this. Clemson front court has been reassembled a little bit this week. R.J. Godfrey returned to Clemson, 4-star. Carter Welling and forward/center Nick Davidson, 3 players from the top 150 from the portal, according to 247. So Brunell doing a pretty good job trying to get this roster, or lack thereof, what was a roster before the portal. Let's get to the portal now, because obviously you have a lot of involvement with that, and being a high school coach and seeing players transfer. We read an article last week, Lane, where Diesel and I were just dumbfounded at the 1,800 plus, or whatever the number was and is now, players in the portal. Not just basketball, is happening in other sports at the college level as well, Lane. But this is the portal is a great thing, but I do think players in their 5th, 6th season at 3, 4 different stops, I think that's a little much. Where do you begin on that? It's such a big development in the last few years. I got 2 pretty neat stories with it. Hayden Brown, when he went in from Citadel, a 2-time Southern Conference, all-conference. When he went in the portal, for me, this blew my mind. He went in at noon on a Friday, and by 2:30, I had talked to 20 Division I Power 4 head coaches or assistant coaches. Now, I could make you a list right now. Yeah. Texas Tech, Loyola Chicago, Clemson, South Carolina.
Calling you.
Because I was listed as one of his contacts.
Yeah.
So with Coach Paris and those guys, but Josh Pastner got hired last week as UNLV's coach, was at Georgia Tech at the time. Josh and I talked for 2 hours, and Josh had done his homework. He could tell you plays that Hayden had made against Chattanooga or wherever, and he was in depth about how much he wanted Hayden. Coach Paris developed a relationship with Hayden when he was the head coach at Chattanooga prior to coming to South Carolina. So when I say a relationship, just a coaching rivalry, they talk to guys. But, the thing that has stumped me with it all is when I've spoke to numerous coaches, and I mean this, Coach Young, Coach Brownell, there's an order. And for me, it's a little bit bittersweet. But, I even wrote it down. The high school kid now is the 6th recruited kid, okay, 6.
Correct.
All right, so with that, I was like, all right, explain that to me. He says, number one, we recruit our own players. You have to recruit. Last year, Ian Shefflin had to be re-recruited by Clemson. No doubt about it. NIL package had to go up.
Yeah.
Number two, they then recruit the D1 portal. All right, so you're looking at the D1 portal at that point. I mean, just like Godfrey coming back to Clemson, Michie coming back to South Carolina, you'll have some of that. The kid that's now at NC State was at Clemson. We could go on. The list is huge. So that's number two. Number three, they start recruiting D2 All-Americans. D2 All-Americans that they're looking at that they know can play. That's number three. Number four, a big recruit out of JUCO could be an All-American, or it could be somebody that they see having a lot of potential. Number five is your fifth-year senior, which is your top prep schools across the country. And then number six is a high school kid. And as a guy that's coached high school basketball 26 years, for me, that's a new landscape.
Is that alarming to you?
Extremely alarming. Yeah. And it's, again, it's tough. My son's a D2 player. He went in the portal. He's coming back this way. Like I said, Hayden Brown, I've probably had 3 D1s, but guys that were recruited 10 years ago aren't being recruited, not even 10 years ago.
You heard what Patino said, right?
Oh, I watched his show last night, but I also heard what he said. But last night now, he said – We're basically a pro organization.
That's right.
I spent 3 days with Nate Oates and his staff back in October, and when I walked out of there to drive back to Duncan, South Carolina, that is 100% pro basketball. Yeah. And if anybody tells you different, they are lying. I could go through from their meals that were like, I'm talking not just, hey, we're going to get them a biscuit or whatever. I'm talking about rooms of food, to everything that 33 people at their practices – filming, breaking down film during practice, the coaches,
now, is that
everything.
Across D1 or more just Power 4? I mean, in terms of college now being a pro game.
Yeah, I think it's definitely still the haves and have-nots.
Sure.
Okay, there's no doubt about that in my mind. In the SEC, forever, I wrote it down today, 9 of the last 25 national champions were ACC. Well, ACC took a major slide, not only this year, last year. Duke's obviously in the Final Four. Clemson had a good year. Louisville. But when it comes down to it, ACC forever, Tobacco Road, you name it, there were not only Final Four teams, national champion teams, and now the ACC with the football revenue sharing going into the total programs, NIL's just taken over, and it's not going to change until this new collective bargaining agreement is out there for vote for the NCAA.
So here's a question we've been asked a lot on the show. And by the way, Tolos, if you have a question for Lane, who is joining us in studio, he's the boys basketball coach at Burns, also does color commentary with me on Friday nights for Burns football, talking a little portal, Florida. We'll get into the Final Four as well. But we get this question a lot when you talk about the ACC not being what they were. Why, Lane, in a conference that dominated the history of college basketball, why was that conference not able to use NIL in the portal in the same way a conference in the SEC who, had Kentucky and LSU?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's it, right?
From the way I understand it, the football revenue sharing goes in, with the basketball. So take your SEC football, whether this upsets people or not, and you look at the schools, all right? And so all of a sudden –
So football has a huge impact on what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. And so now that they're actually – the schools are up to vote right now. I've talked to different college coaches whether they're going to go into the revenue sharing, and some of that, there's so many details to it, but it cuts out like walk-ons. There's a lot of different things that it does. So, it's a little bit of integrity. What do you want to do there? But I think that SEC dove in with, first off, look at their coaches. Okay, you go out and you get stacked and just go out and get all these great coaches, and they're paying them a lot of money. They're going to get those players. And, I read an article yesterday. A starter right now in the SEC, his market value is between $500,000 and $1.2 million. I mean, and I'm talking about basketball.
Right.
And you go back to what you said, they're transferring in all sports. The reason it's so alarming, and with basketball last year, all the guys that went in, 42% never got out. And so now all of a sudden people can say what they want.
Their career's over, right?
Well, I mean, no, you could still you could sit that year for whatever reason and then get picked up, and then all of a sudden maybe your skills improve, or maybe somebody has a need there.
Yeah. I'm curious of how many of them are, in that boat.
And people laugh at the term student athlete now, but for 98% of them in that college game, they're still going to go out into the workforce and be, use their education to help them.
So with what's going on in the portal now, you're a high school basketball coach at a 5A program in the state of South Carolina. That's as high as it gets right now in terms of classifications. how does that hurt a program in the state, not just in South Carolina? How does that hurt the portal? What's happening with what Pitino said and others and what you just read off? How does that hurt the high school programs and the student athletes?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gives you a little bit of you almost feel obsolete as some of those players. Like last year, Cam Scott's a top 50 player by 5 different national rankings.
Right.
I coached against him, know him well.
Sure.
I think he still has a world of potential. He goes to South Carolina this year and averages 3.8, almost 4 minutes a game. And, and it's like, and basically there's a lot of different people I'd spoke to and why that were inside the program. I won't get into that. But to answer your question, it's deflating. You have to navigate the landscape now. And I've talked to a lot of coaches. Let me use my son, for example, a good player, my oldest son playing Division II.
Yeah.
All-state, 5A. I mean, I'm not dare saying he's an ESPN top 50 guy, but he's a good high school player that definitely deserves a shot to play college basketball, had 4 or 5 Division II offers. But I had a good friend of mine that coaches at North Florida, Bruce Evans, played at Furman, was an All-American. He said, Lane, right now we don't need an 18, 19-year-old guy. If Will's good enough and he gets a couple years, then basically they level up. They're looking for guys that are 21, 22 that level up.
So is JUCO now a better route?
It's definitely on the table a little bit more.
Yeah.
And but like Division II didn't opt in to the JUCO route of going 2 years or 1 year and then still having 4 years.
Right.
People don't get this yet. That's only for Division I.
Sure.
That's not Division II. Yeah. And so a lot of guys that go to JUCO, maybe they can't make that jump to D1. Yeah. And so then they're like, oh, I'm just going to go JUCO because I still get 4 more years. Well, that's not completely true. So you got to truly do your homework for your kid. And then what I've learned, and I'm talking about all my players are my kid in my mind, but you have to find the right fit. Yeah. And that sounds corny, but
it's tough though, right?
So tough. There is just not as much opportunity out there right now.
Let's run to a break. On the other side with Lane Fowler, who joins me in studio. Let's get into the Final Four. 2 huge games tomorrow night. I want to hear from you Tolos as well. If you have any comments, questions, the Hub City Spartanburgers text line, it's open, 844-326-3663. Phone lines will open back up in the 5 o'clock hour. You can also watch the show live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Final Four conversation next. riding solo, but not solo during the 4 o'clock hour, as I'm joined in studio by Lane Fowler. He's the head boys basketball coach at Burns High School here in Spartanburg County over in Duncan. Also, you hear him on Friday nights during the fall as Burns football color commentator. Talked a lot about the portal there. We'll get back into it, Lane, but tomorrow night, 2 really big matchups, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I think 2 really good games. Let's start with this, though. I opened the show today with a conversation about the tournament and why we like Cinderellas. I said, again, maybe it's a basketball guru versus a casual fan. Maybe that's the conversation, that's the barrier, that's the gap. But I said I'll take this year's tournament 10 out of 10 over VCU or Loyola Chicago. I understand it's fun, but why do you think, from someone who is a basketball junkie yourself, why do people complain this year about the tournament not having Cinderellas, even though it's been really good quality basketball?
I 2 things there. I think you obviously got the best 4 teams in the Final Four.
100%.
You could make an argument a little bit with Alabama, maybe not because Duke beat them by 20.
Right.
St. John's got ousted. A couple other teams here and there, but you're getting the cream of the crop. And with that being said, you're right. You're seeing great basketball. It pretty much chalked its way all the way through. Who was this year's biggest Cinderella? McNeese, Drake. I mean, Arkansas was a 12, 10 seed.
10 seed, right?
Yeah. And I don't know if you could say
and
that.
Cal was a Cinderella.
Yeah,
right? That's the new version of a Cinderella.
And
Coach
7
Cal.
McDonald's All-Americans.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard. But I personally liked, when Shaka took VCU. I love when Greg Marshall took Wichita State, when Larry Garrett took George Mason. I think the playing field was obviously a little bit more even. Now it's the haves more and the have-nots even more. But
it's more top-heavy now?
It is, and it's due to so much pay goes, going back to one of the coaches in the ACC that's a friend of mine. He said, Lane, we paid a guy $350,000. Miami offered him $650,000. I mean, $300,000 more dollars. Come on, Cole.
That's a lot of money.
Dude, that's a ton of money for a guy that's 21 years old. Anybody. If another radio station offered you $20,000, you might run out of here. But
$20.
Yeah. But I mean, seriously, it's a big deal. And so I love the basketball. I'm super excited about tomorrow night's matchups. I think there's 2 great matchups.
Before we get into them, is there any validity into the conversation about, the tournament being top-heavy, the teams being top-heavy, with the NIL and the portal? Is there validity, in your opinion, from the argument of or the conversation of, because of NIL, there's not as many great players at smaller programs, maybe mid-major programs? Now they're all getting paid top dollar by the big fish, the big fish, right? Mm-hmm. They can afford it. The big boats are attracting the big fish, right? So that's maybe why you're not seeing as many Cinderellas, is because there's not as many good players scattered. Is there any validity to that in your mind?
Definitely, and just think of it in these terms. Let's say you're a really good player at a Southern Conference school, really good player, and you go, you develop a relationship with a coach. They help you get better. Your teammates, you love them. But, their NIL is so small if they have anything, and then all of a sudden you're getting offered whatever the situation, $100,000 to $500,000, and it's like, you know what? I've helped build a relationship with this young man. I've developed him, and now he's going. And I know people, say, well, coaches do it all the time. That's not even – I'm not even arguing that. I agree with that. But, yes, to your point, those great or good players that have a potential of being great, they're definitely going. I mean, there's a rumor out there right now that underwritings are going on of the Power Four conferences completely breaking off from this NCAA tournament, having their own tournament of whether it's 32 teams, 48 teams, and you will never see – now the other will become the CBI, the NIT. And I'm serious. It's got a lot of traction to it.
Why?
And I think because they don't want give me a good team that missed this year, Indiana. Okay, Big Ten. When I say a good team, a team that was on the bubble, bracketology.
What was it, Irvine UC Irvine?
UC Irvine last night in Chattanooga. What a great game. I love that game. But, let's say North Carolina had not got in.
Right.
They think a North Carolina team shouldn't be replaced by, let's say, a Wofford that didn't win their conference but won their conference tournament. They know in their mind that North Carolina, they think, is better than Wofford. So I still like those matchups that we just talked about. I love the NCAA tournament. But those ADs, those presidents, and those coaches think, hey, if we take our top 10 from the Big Ten, top 10 from the ACC, SEC, and we form our own. Now we're going to get away with some of that just, small fish and guys that can't really make a run, and let's see who the best team is. I'm not saying I like it, but believe me when I tell you that is being discussed.
Well, I hear what you say in terms of it being discussed, but my counter argument would be if they're the best,
They'll prove it anyway.
Won't they separate themselves from
Right.
the Walfords? So, you know what I mean? We talked about many times, many days on this show not long ago about expanding the tournament, right? More teams getting in. I don't think it would really help the mid-majors. I think it'd be Georgia or whoever else, right, from the Power Four. It's tough because the tournament, for what we've known it for so long to be, you said in a text to me a couple of weeks ago, you don't think it'll ever go back to the way it was. Not to say there won't be upsets, but in terms of
if we stay with the current landscape, with where it is, with the NIL and basically it just being the Wild West, they don't have any kind of parameters on it right now. They say they do. It started as name, image, likeness. That is, Rick Pitino said it last night on his show. Like, that's really not true at all. The university just pays them.
Sure.
Now you have like Garnet Trust, you have Clemson, you have different things that are. Yeah. And, different ones are going to keeping 30% till a kid turns 25. They're trying to help these kids manage their money, and some are just throwing it out there at them. But, no, I do not think it'll go back to, some of those days that we had before where you had more upsets and whatnot. And I'll say this, too, going back to what we were talking about. I have so much respect for your mid-major conference, a Big South, a Southern Conference. And it hurts me when one of those teams, let's say they go 16-2. But they don't win their conference tournament, and it could be one thing. It could be a hurt ankle. It could be a bad night, whatever. Then they get relegated to smaller tournaments, even though they have won their conference. They just didn't win a power conference.
Sure.
So there's so many different discussions that go with that.
Let's get into tomorrow night. 2 games tomorrow night. Start with the 6:09 game, Florida-Auburn. By the way, all 4 1 seeds, so we'll talk about that as well. Florida-Auburn tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I said yesterday that I like Florida to win. You got a 4-man rotation in the post. It's going to be tough on Janai Broome, I think. Florida's already beaten them once. And, again, it's hard to beat a team twice, right? Or at least they say. But Auburn does have Janai Broome. So what are your initial thoughts on this one?
I think going into the tournament, Florida was playing the best basketball of anybody in the country. I think now that the tournament's 4 games in, I think Duke has played the best basketball. Florida's right there. Florida, the Texas Tech had them beat dead in the water.
Yep,
and
100%.
Florida just, incredible 18-3 run over the last 3.5 minutes. So, tip your hat to them. I've been extremely impressed with Florida all year, and Auburn. Auburn with the experience and the starting 5 of 23.5 years old. Right. They got a lot. And then you got guys coming off the bench. I think Pettiford's one of the best guards in the country. Hasn't started a game this year for Auburn. And honestly seems very happy. Maybe it's $500,000 in NIL. I don't know what makes him so happy, but he's an unbelievable player. I love how Florida, with Walter as the lead guard, I love how they run so much through their bigs. It's very European.
Right.
Their actions, they do so many things. And then, like you said, their depth, they wear on you. Auburn's got a lot of depth. They're playing 10 and 11 guys. So I think it's going to, obviously, them being in the same conference, it's going to be a battle.
Late in the game, though, if late in the game, let's say we get a minute 45 to go, do you trust Auburn's best player to make a shot, or do you trust Walter Clayton to make it? Because there's few guards in the country that have been as clutch as Walter Clayton in the tournament. That's a tough one.
That is a really tough question. Broome can step out. I know he's not a guard. Pettiford, like I said, he can create his own shot. I love Walter. I do for Florida. It will be interesting to see. They always say your best players shine in the biggest moments, and camps. I mean, it's been amazing to watch those teams play and compete all year. If you're putting me on the spot, I do think Florida wins that game tomorrow night, but it would not at all shock me because just Auburn, they're tough. Bruce Pearl obviously is an unbelievable coach. They're experienced. I looked today, all 4 of their 5 starters didn't start their career at Auburn. Florida, I think, 2 started their career there. So going back to a lot of transfers in those lineups. But I think we're set up for, again, 2 of the best games we've had in a lot of years for the Final Four.
Houston, Duke, you mentioned it. In the tournament, it does seem like Duke's playing on another level, right? With everybody in the tournament. I mean, they're playing on another level compared to everybody else in my mind. I agree with you there. I said yesterday Houston is going to have to run a marathon if they want to beat Duke, not a sprint, because Duke's – I don't want to say they're unbeatable, but I just feel like you're going to have to, if you're Houston, play your best that you played all season long. I mean, of all the games they've played, I think you're going to have your absolute best to beat Duke. Is that a little too much?
I think, you giving them almost the full week to prepare. Nate Oates said it. He goes, they're a horrible team to have 2 days of preparation.
Sure. You're talking about Duke.
Yes.
Going against Duke, right.
Kelvin Sampson and his staff, you give them, since they beat Purdue.
Almost a week, right?
Yeah. I think they're going to be 100% ready. They do so many things. They call it monster, where they double the bigs with their other big. They'll do a lot of traps on the ball screens. But Duke has so many different options there. I think Houston's game plan is going to obviously be to be very physical, muck it up, make it difficult for Duke. But, the one thing about Duke that shocked me against Alabama was how well they defended. Like, I've always thought they've had a good defense this year, but, it was locked down. They switched every ball screen in for 40 minutes last week, and I was like, that's not really good. Somebody's going to create and make something happen, and they couldn't.
So how can Houston, in your mind, exploit that? I mean, you're talking about having a week to prepare, and I agree with you. That's a big advantage. But what do you see Houston do where you feel like they have an advantage over Duke? Now, again, that's a tough question to ask. Obviously, they would love it if Duke didn't play their best game, right? And Houston might have a lot to do with that defensively. But I don't know. You're the expert here. I struggle finding an area where Houston has an advantage.
If they can get Duke's, what's the big center's name? Anyway, if they can get him switched out on a guard, okay, he's so long. He showed last week he could guard Sears, who's an All-American for Alabama. But if they can get him switched out there and they're big inside, that was player of the year, if they can get him touches on a guard. Now, James is extremely strong for Duke as a guard. If they can get some of those matchups, I think that's where they're going to have an advantage. But they're going to have to, either in those ball screens, whether it's trapping them or whatever it is and getting rebounds, they're going to have to get some in transition. They're not as good as Duke in transition, but they're going to have to knock down some shots. I don't think they'll see a Duke like Tennessee where you start the game and it's 8 points, in the first 15 minutes of the game. And it surprised me that Coach Barnes let Tennessee keep just hoisting up 3 after 3, because I have so much respect for Coach Barnes and his staff. They just never truly went inside, which Houston negates that so much. If they can limit Duke to 1 shot, and Houston does a good job of that, and then lastly, nobody gets on the offensive glass like Houston Cougars. Nobody in America. So, and Duke's one of the more difficult teams to do that on. So that's where the rubber's going to meet the road right there.
When you say they're one of the most difficult teams to do that on, is that because of how well they shoot the ball or their size or what? When you say, in terms of offensive rebounding for Houston, right? Houston, what you said, the best team
in America,
offensive rebounding, but you said it was going to be tough for them to do that as well as they have against Duke. Why is that?
I think Duke's just bigger than people think.
Okay.
You just don't realize the size of some of those guys. And when I was right there behind Clemson's bench watching that Clemson-Duke game, I saw Paulo Banchero's team a couple years back, and I thought that was the biggest team I'd ever seen. But this Duke team is very similar, if not just as big. So I think that makes it more difficult. And James, the transfer that came in as the guard for Duke, he's so strong, and he's so 6'4", and he takes away a lot of those guard rebounds. Cooper Flagg, I'm just amazed. I was like, the jury was out for me on him for a long time. Not because I didn't think he was great, but I wanted to see, is he a prima donna? He's not. He plays hard. He competes.
Coachable.
He wants best for his teammates. He absolutely gets after it, and I am very much in love with that.
Last year when I saw him drain a 3 over Anthony Davis, I was like, okay. I mean, he played pretty well against those guys, right? I mean, who else has had that opportunity that he had? Nobody, right? To do what he did. Was it last summer?
It was this past summer.
Yeah. So
he was still 17.
17 years old.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Cooper Flagg and a little bit more, obviously, as the hour comes to an end. The text line, the Hub City Spartanburgers text line, it's open. Madcraft, Mad Therapy on the YouTube stream, getting in a lot of comments as well. 844-326-3663 is the number you can text on the show. We'll continue the conversation next. Joined in studio for one more segment by Lane Fowler, who is the head boys basketball coach at Burns, also on the Fan Upstate Friday nights during the fall. By the way, nice little press box coming up over there, right?
Man, I was checking it out. Not the press box. I was checking out the stadium today, and
It's going to be ready in time?
it is.
It is?
It is. I talked to a guy down there today. It's going to be ready, and you could tell he obviously has done lots of projects, but he's like, man, people don't. He says once we get this outer,
That's probably the hardest part.
Yeah.
Texter says, great show today. I'm not sure if you have any time to answer a quick question. No worries. Coach Fowler, with the new one-time sixth semester, let's see here, transfer rule, do they not require those athletes to provide proof of residency?
Are we
Texter
talking high school or?
Texter, clarify there if you talk.
It has to be high school. Yeah, because they don't care about residency in college.
Yeah.
Man, we are still kind of navigating that ourselves.
The one-time transfer rule is what I guess the Texter's referring to, right?
Yeah, so technically right now, before 2 weeks ago, the ruling that came down with our ADs and principals meeting in Charleston, you had to have a legal change of address, and we all know that was kind of not necessarily happening everywhere, or, a couple other stipulations.
What was your initial thoughts when the one-time transfer rule was passed?
For me, again, I'm an old head, 26 years into the coaching. I love trying to win with our Duncan, Lyman, Welford, Reeville, StarTex kids. I wouldn't turn away a transfer.
Sure.
Okay, but I haven't had only a couple in my career too. I do think there's something to be said with whether it's the small towns, several small towns making a high school, or one small town making a high school. I think there's something to be said with those kids growing up with that community and having a chance to go win it. I'm not completely naive. It is what it is right now.
I thought there was a little bit when it happened, and tell me if you disagree here. I thought there was a little bit too much overreaction from the sense of it's already happening.
Right.
Like, let's be real. It's already happening. Now it's just limited to one time legally, unless this, and this happens. So, yes, it's going to change things, but is it like it's –
I think the haves,
happening.
again, going back to what we're talking about, going to become a little bit more haves and the have-nots.
Sure.
Just for instance, my son, who's a good player, my youngest son, Colt, if he – God, I hope he doesn't, but if he tells me, Dad, I'm going to live here, but I'm going to go play next year at –
yeah, you'd be in trouble, right?
Yeah, Spartanburg, Dorman, wherever. He can legally do that, going back to the question a minute ago. So that is a change. There's going to be different school districts that have they require taxes to be paid if you come out of district, things like that. So it's going to be a very interesting landscape. I hope we can navigate it the right way, but we try to do the right by our kids. It's not a promo for us, but we've worked with our kids since our youth league. We're going to be fine over at Burns. Could we, if a guy comes in 6'8" and can play, are we going to turn him away? I doubt it. But
Grand Prairie has a kid that's 6'9" from happens to move.
But what you hope doesn't happen is it just becomes the Wild West. All of a sudden, whatever school A has 7 new guys on a team next year that has never darkened the doors of their elementary or middle schools. That would be, in my opinion, a travesty.
How are we on the shot clock? Any traction there?
Yeah, this year, last year I went down to the AD meeting and I presented it again, and we had great participation. We actually had 100%
feedback as well.
Great feedback. So this year, what they gave us, Cole, was in the past we could do showcase events and tournaments.
Yeah.
This past year we could up it to our non-region games. So we played Greer with it, J.L. Mann, Daniel. I pushed for a proposal of, like Georgia did, within 2 years, let's have it fully implemented. And even if it's just 5A and 4A who voted 100%, and then let's see. And I'm not knocking 3A, 2A, 1A, but let's see where it is, whether it's financial. Yeah. But I put it in a situation to where you had time to get the finances. We're not talking millions of dollars here. $3,600 is state of the art. And so you could have it. And I just think it's, next year in the United States, 25 states will have it. I don't want South Carolina to be the 48th, 49th, or 50th.
Let me tell you my problem with what we have now. And you're right. Getting in non-region games, that's great. But, I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. You know how many games in the postseason, boys and girls this postseason, were impacted by not having a shot clock? What I mean is, how many games that I watched and heard about had teams holding basketballs for 2 close? That happened multiple times in the postseason, especially at the girl. It was a topic of conversation. We talked about it with Lou Bezjak. It happens in Columbia, the Midlands. to me, the postseason, I get sprinkling it in and trying to adjust, but come on, and look, not to people who are in favor of what it is now, I can't really understand much of their reasoning at all, just to be quite honest. I mean, it's not bad. To me, holding the basketball for a minute and a half, that's not basketball.
Keep away.
Right.
It's well within their rights, and if they do it, you know what, and they can do it successfully, it's well within their rights. I just think, the game's grown. In 1986, when the three-point line came in, there was a staunch group of people that did not want it, and it's revolutionized the game over the last 40 years. I'm not saying this is it, but when you talk to Mike Young, you talk to Brad Brownell, Lamont Paris, talk to Don Staley, and basically they all say the same thing. It's archaic. We don't have one in high school basketball.
Development.
They always say teach to your brightest kids in education. Well, when we tell them if we only have 5 kids over 10 years that play college basketball, at least we're getting them ready. It's a better game. It's better for defense. Yeah. You know how hard it is to play defense for a minute and a half. You can play defense for 35 seconds.
Especially if you're picking them up in the, it's guarding them 94.
And guess what? The better coaches will adjust. Yeah. The better coaches will make it happen, and that's just my opinion.
Last one for you before we run, because I know you got to go.
I can hang, buddy.
I know I don't want to keep you here forever. South Carolina, Lady Gamecocks, tough one tonight.
Yeah.
Tough. Playing a team 4 times.
Yeah.
I mean, that's –
well, it's tough for both teams. I thought the first time Texas just absolutely dominated them in the paint. I thought they just got what they wanted. Games 2 and 3, South Carolina adjusted. Game 3 here in Greenville just absolutely took it away in the second half.
Kind of rolled in the second half.
Yeah. What Dawn's done in 5 consecutive Final Fours, just everything, it's unbelievable. But
people don't realize
it's mind-boggling.
5. Here's my problem. People say, "Oh, it's women's basketball." I mean, nobody cares about what. There wasn't a seat in Greenville like that. Yeah. It was packed.
No, it's
going to be packed in Tampa. I mean, it's not going to be sold out. South Carolina fans will be there tonight.
Absolutely,
I promise
they
you
travel.
I just think, Dawn's so great to the media. It's hard not to like her. In terms of her availability and what she'll do, she's elite. I mean, there are 1, 2, 3 elite coaches, and she's definitely one of them. So appreciate you being here. Obviously, a lot more conversation to be had. And we'll continue it in hour number 3. Want to hear from you, Tolos, as well. That's next.
Man, yeah, what she's done is crazy.
That was fun.
That was fun. Thank you. I enjoyed that.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You got to go get your mom. It's hard to believe, man, that thing.
I just hope I do see some things trending the right way with football. Then, of course, I see the other where I'm like, all right.
I've heard from several people, man. I don't think it's just hearsay. I've heard a lot of good things the past 2 months.
Honestly, Cole, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I have seen a lot more positive things, and I do think that group of 9th and 10th graders. I'm not just saying talent, but they're good, old school, hardworking boys.
Man, a lot to get to in these next 2 hours of the show. So glad you could join me on this Friday afternoon, heading into Friday evening. I'm Cole Bryson, Diesel, on vacation today. He'll be back on Monday, doing a little camping, I believe, this weekend. As long as he doesn't set any wildfires ablaze, we should be in good shape to have Diesel back on Monday. Good to see JB join the stream on YouTube, where 101 of you Tolos are watching the show. Not only can you listen to Wire, you can watch live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. JB says, I see some predictions for the men's Final Four. I got Florida 87, Auburn 80, and I got Houston upsetting Duke 64-63. Wow, how about that? Then I've got Florida beating Houston 73-69 to win the national championship. Good predictions, JB. I like that. We've got a lot to get to. We've got Todd Golden audio. I've got a story about Dawn Staley that, man, it's an incredible story that I'm going to share with you guys that I read earlier today. That's just one of the best articles I've ever read about Dawn Staley. We'll get to that. But since JB kicked us off, let's go right to that, JB. Let's go right back to the predictions. And let's hear from you, Tolos, at 844-FAN-PHONE on what your predictions are for tomorrow night. Since we will not be on air tomorrow, obviously, with it being Saturday, I want to hear your predictions for Florida-Auburn tomorrow night at 6:09 and then Houston-Duke at 8:49. The phone lines were closed during that last hour because, man, Lane Fowler and I had such a good conversation. Shout out to Lane Fowler for sitting in with me for an entire hour. I've already gotten just a ton of feedback on the text line, my personal phone, and the stream as well about that conversation. So much appreciate Lane for hopping in for an hour, talking a little basketball, as you heard right here on the Fan Upstate. But let's get to some predictions, Tolos. I want to hear from you now. The phone lines are open. They're wide open at 844-FAN-PHONE. That is 844-326-3663. Save that number in your phone. That way you don't have to rely on me. And when I go to the phone lines today, I have my favorite movie, my favorite scene from my favorite movie that I'm going to play a piece of audio from. The reason I have to do this, just to pull the curtain back for you, is because it is illegal to screen calls on air. So I have to have something. Usually when Diesel and I are here, he can continue to talk while I answer the phone. However, when you're solo, you have to play some audio. You have to screen the call before you put the caller on air. So I have my favorite scene from my favorite movie while I grab phone calls today. And here's a phone call right here. I'll be right back. Mm-hmm. Wire to wire, what's your name? You know that movie, don't you? I mean, come on. Who doesn't know that movie? So one caller already on hold. Again, phone lines are wide open right now at 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663. The Hub City Spartanburgers text line is also open at 844-FAN-PHONE. You can text the show. You can call the show. The same number works for both. But I want to hear your predictions as well as those on the stream, the 101 that are watching right now on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You don't have to give me a score. It'd be nice if you did. But for Florida-Auburn tomorrow and then for Houston-Duke, I do have Florida advancing past Auburn, as Florida was my national championship pick. Diesel and I actually both had Florida cutting down the nets at the end of the season. Look, Duke's obviously playing really, really good basketball right now. So I'm going with Florida over Auburn. I'm not going to give you a score prediction quite yet. You'll have to wait on that. And then I'm going to go Duke. Look, as much as I want Houston to win, I mean, my goodness, I think America's pulling for Houston, right? Even though Duke's not as hated as they used to be, I think we're still pulling for Houston here. Duke's a little bit more likable, believe it or not. But I'm going Duke in Florida in the national championship. Let's go to the phone lines at 844-326-3663. Let's go ahead and line those up a few more callers deep while we have Dewey, who wants to chime in. It's our daily Dewey. You never know what you're going to get from Dewey. What's up, Dewey?
Yes, I think Florida's going to beat Auburn, and they're going to beat them quite handedly.
Really? You got a score prediction, Dewey?
86-70.
Good God. 16 points. Is that 16-point game?
Yes.
Okay, so you have Florida moving on. What about Houston Duke?
I don't like Duke, but I have to go with Duke.
Yeah,
I don't think Houston's ready for Duke. And I think Duke's going to beat them handedly, too.
You got a score?
Probably 82-73.
82-73. You know, Dewey, as much as we make fun of you, it'll be funny if you're right tomorrow night when it's all said and done, right?
I've been right about a lot of things lately. And I got one more prediction.
Okay.
Miami in 3. Miami's going to sweep the Braves this weekend.
Ooh, boy. Miami in 3.
Because this just until something drastic happens with the Braves, they're not going to win many games.
You don't even think they'll beat Miami one time, do we?
No, the pitcher on the mound, Swellenbach is good, but the other pitcher is 1.95 ERA, and the Braves ain't hitting nothing. And the Braves traditionally don't do well against Miami pitching anyways until they get to their bullpen.
Dewey, I am predicting a Braves win tonight. Am I an idiot?
I want that Swellenbach got to be on, but
Thanks, Dewey.
I just don't know.
Thanks. Appreciate the phone call. He got 2 uhs in there. JB on the YouTube. Madcraft, Mad Therapy says, see what I mean? Mad, you have got to learn to put more context with your messages. I don't know what you mean when you say, see what I mean. Put some context in your message so I can know what you're talking about. Or, Madcraft, pick up the phone and call the show. It's very simple. The phone numbers, you know, it's not too hard to dial 844-326-3663. Tolo Steve on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line. Tolo Steve says, tell Dewey I'll take the Braves over Miami. I mean, Tolo Steve, they're going to win at least one game, right? I mean, you would think. You'd think they would win one game. Oh, my gosh. So I want to continue to hear from you, Tolos, that are listening and watching. So many ways to do so. 97.1 FM in Spartanburg, 97.7 FM in Greenville, anywhere in the world on the free Odyssey app. Let's see. Scotty from BMW on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line says, got to get those numbers up, Cole. That's right. That's great. Was that the same? Yeah, that was the same scene, wasn't it? Was that the exact same scene from the sound that I played? Yeah, I think it was with Matthew. Oh, man, it's a great movie. It's been a while. That's like one of your rotations. That movie's got to be in your rotation to watch, like once a year, once every 8 months. I hadn't seen it in a while, but I think it's time to rewatch that one. Matt says, Dewey saying the Marlins would sweep. So do you agree with that, Matt? Disagree? I mean, what's your prediction? It's fine. We can take Braves predictions as well since Dewey started it off that way. Because the Braves are playing. Heck, we can take predictions on anything. If you want to call in or text in with your prediction, just anything happening this weekend, that's okay. John on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line says, I'm going with Duke and Florida to win both. John, both games and then Duke, Florida meeting in the national championship, right? Is that what you mean there? I'm with you. I think that does happen. It seems like, John, by the way, appreciate the text. It seems like most people are in line with that thinking, with your thinking, with my thinking. Again, no disrespect to Houston. They're so well coached. And to Lane Fowler's point in the last hour, they've had a week to prepare for Duke, right? Or close to a week. So that matters. They're still going to be a very tough team. There's no doubt about that. But having a little bit more time to prepare, it does help. Kevin on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line says, Dewey is now DD. Double D for dumb Dewey. I'm surprised he didn't predict a score of 83-75 over 36-50. Kevin. Dewey getting some shade, man, on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line. Continue with your predictions on the stream as well. JB says, as you can tell, my hate runs deep for Duke. While you continue, though, to get your predictions in, man, I've got to read you this article. I don't want to bore you to death. I don't want to just read the entire article and you'll think, oh, that's really great radio. But every now and then, there's an article that comes out that we've got to share with you. And again, it's not the best radio for me just to read verbatim an article online because you can read it. I can tell you where to go. However, once every blue moon, there's an article that's written that is 100% worth reading on air, and that's what I'm going to do. It's about Dawn Staley. So while I read this, I want to continue to hear from you, Tolos, on the text line and the stream as well. The phone lines are still open. But this is an article on ESPN. I want to give credit to Haley Grossman. This is just an excellent piece on Dawn Staley, right? Here we are 2 hours before South Carolina gets their game going against Texas for the fourth time this season, those two teams playing. So, I'll stop and react, but this is just one of those, man, that it's too good not to be read. Haley Grossman of ESPN writes, almost 40 years ago in North Philadelphia, Dawn Staley was walking home from high school one afternoon with a friend from the neighborhood when something remarkable happened, or more to the point, didn't happen. So as Tolos, as you know, maybe if you didn't know, Dawn Staley grew up in Philadelphia. That's why she's a big Philadelphia Eagles fan. Haley goes on to say, she lived in a row home in the Raymond Rosen housing projects. Her friend Charles Gathers had grown up in the high-rises across Diamond Street, but had recently moved to Staley's side of the projects. The two of them, Gathers and Staley, the two of them and the Gathers' cousin Patrice were making their way back to Raymond Rosen, he remembers, when a man jumped out in front of them and tried to grab Patrice. Another man, this one with a knife, followed on his heels. Gathers was about to step in when the men recognized Staley, that short girl who can play basketball with any boy. Whatever their plans were, Gather recalls, seeing Staley changed their minds. The man retreated, basically vanished. She goes on to say, this was the nature of Staley's slice of the city. If you lived in a certain area, you couldn't go outside your area to even play a game because of the various gang affiliations, says Doit Jones, who was one of Staley's high school coaches. But with Staley, nobody was going to threaten her or anything like that because they recognized her athletic ability. Her game was her passport. She was small but played big. She was young but played old. She was a girl but had no problem playing against the boys. Her game felt as if it were made for Philly, made of Philly, brimming with the same extraordinary mental and physical toughness. Bo Kimball says the city and its people did. Kimball, who grew up in North Philly, played college ball in Southern California and professional ball all over the world. But nothing, he says, was tougher than Philly ball. So I'll stop right there for a quick second. And when I saw this article on ESPN today and read those first three paragraphs, I already know so much. You Tolos out there, you already know so much about Dawn Staley, where she's from, what she came from, the player that she was, the coach that she is now. But, man, when you hear stories like this, let me ask you a question. If you're a Clemson fan out there, if you're a fan of another program out there, when you hear stories like this, how do you not pull for her? How do you not pull for her? I'm not saying I'm asking Clemson fans to pull for South Carolina. I'm not asking that. I know that's a tall task or a tall ask, right? Or a tough ask for you to pull for Clemson. Or vice versa, you as a Clemson fan to pull for South Carolina. I'm not asking that. However, here's my perspective. you hear so much about this lady who is Dawn Staley. For me, in my opinion, it is incredibly difficult not to pull for her. I'm just going to be, I don't care if you've grown up a Clemson fan, if you're the biggest Clemson fan in the history of the world, you bleed orange more than anybody else. How do you not, well, you say her politics and her, yeah, I get that, but everybody has different political opinions, right? Everybody believes something different. That's what makes, the country we live in great. Everybody's different. We should celebrate that, right? Instead of critiquing people for having differences of opinion. But hearing this story about them almost being mugged with a guy or two men and a knife, and them recognizing Dawn Staley because they knew that girl could ball, I'm telling you what, man, that is just unbelievable. So Haley Grossman goes on to talk about, and Haley Grossman goes on to say, by the time Staley was approaching high school, the legend of Dawn Staley, Philly baller, that short girl who can play with any boy, had traveled as fast as those would-be aggressors disappeared into the North Philadelphia ether that day. Kimball says she had gained the respect of the entire city just as a teenager. Now, the writer goes on to talk about and write in this article, now Staley is vying for her fourth national championship, as we all know. I'm going to go down a little bit to where she says, Dawn Staley has always meant something more on the ground she walks on. She has transcended the game and the places she has called home. So, I don't remember, or I don't know, Tolos, if you remember a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember who it was with. It was a guest, and maybe it was Matt Smith, Smitty of Sports Talk. Anyways, we had a guest on, and I asked the question about Dawn Staley. And I asked the question, if Dawn Staley saved women's basketball, and I believe the answer from the guest a few weeks, maybe a month or so ago now, I believe the answer from the guest that we had on was something to the sound of, I don't know if I can go that far because of what the likes of Pat and Gino have done for the game, but she certainly has transcended the game. I'm here to tell you that I disagree with the answer from the guest that day. I do think Dawn Staley look, you can put whatever adjective you want. I think she's transcended the game. She's evolved the game. She's grown the game. But I'm here to tell you, I think Dawn Staley saved the sport of women's college basketball. And yes, we have a front row seat to it because of the state that we live in. And I don't care if you're a Clemson fan or not. It's hard, very, very hard not to pull for Dawn Staley. She's just magnificent. And to the article's point, everywhere she's been, she has left that place better than she found it. Philadelphia, you talk about a city, Tolos, as big as Philadelphia. A city is, and for a high school girl playing basketball to be as well known and as accomplished and as recognized as she was at the high school level, that says a lot. We're not talking about a city like Greenville. We're talking about Philadelphia. She was very well known in Philly. She comes to South Carolina and takes a program and turns it into a powerhouse, a dynasty in women's college basketball. An absolute dynasty. That's what they are. There's no debating that. And again, when I say she has saved the sport, that's no disrespect to the greats, right? The Pats and the Genos and the ones now that are so good at what they do. That's no disrespect. But I don't know that we've seen someone come into the game that can relate to the girls that she coaches that can get the most out of, that can recruit, that can coach, that can keep happy. I mean, my goodness, that's one right there just to park on. When you talk about keeping McDonald's All-American after McDonald's All-American after McDonald's I mean, I could go on forever here, 4 or 5 of them on the bench. When you talk about just keeping them happy, that's a coaching job in itself, right? So I'm here to tell you, I think she did. I think she saved it. I think she saved the sport. I've been a sports fan my whole life. I've grown up watching sports, and I hope that I'm a sports fan the rest of my life. When I go home, I watch sports. On the weekend, I watch sports. It's who I am. I love it. But before Dawn Staley took South Carolina and made them a program that was in contention year in and year out and brought them to a dynasty, I don't even know if I ever watched women's college basketball. Not one time. I'd be lying if I told you, oh, yeah, I kept up with it. I followed it. You didn't watch it. You didn't follow it. I mean, it's unbelievable what she has done for not just the program at South Carolina, but for the game. And Dawn Staley deserves every dime they pay her and some. Every single dime. You ask those females on College Game Day that do an incredible job, ask them what Dawn Staley has done for the game. It's unbelievable. She's just hands down the absolute best. D on the YouTube stream says, as a Clemson fan, I watch Carolina girls basketball just because of Dawn, and they are really good. D also says, preach. Well, D, I'm glad you said that, because I think there are a lot of Clemson fans out there that may not admit it, right? They may not admit it, but I'm sure they watch college. I'm sure they watch South Carolina. I'm sure they do. It'd be tough to say that there's a majority. I mean, because let's be honest, Clemson fans care what South Carolina's doing. They care. They watch. They might not tell you. They might not admit it, but they do, and I do. I love watching South Carolina women's basketball. I think tonight could be an incredible basketball game. I really do. I think they could be tonight. I mean, you're talking about two teams that know each other as good as any other two teams in the conference or in the country. Vic Schaefer, here's what's great about tonight, and we'll get to a break, I promise. But what's great about tonight is Vic Schaefer is as good as they come right now in the game, but Vic Schaefer doesn't hold a candle to Dawn Staley. Go look at his head-to-head record against Dawn Staley. Doesn't hold a candle. I like Vic Schaefer. I can't wait to hear his excuses tonight after the BTA, but Vic Schaefer's one of the best in the game. On the Hub City Spartanburgers text line, G says Florida versus Houston. Florida wins the championship. South Carolina versus UConn. South Carolina, wow. I don't know about that, G. That'd be tough. We'll see. South Carolina did not fare well the last time they played UConn. If they have to play them again, I hope it's not as lopsided, but it was certainly lopsided the time before. Wesley Roberts on the Facebook stream says, had to tune in even on vacay in St. Barths. Well, Wesley, I'm glad that you're enjoying your vacation and rubbing it in. I saw your pictures earlier, by the way. Looks like it's a beautiful place. Reminds me of the upstate, right? Rob Brown on the YouTube stream of the Rob Brown Show, weekday 6 to 10, right here on the Fan Upstate, says, checking in. Been watching women's basketball since the turn of the millennial because Diana Taurasi was a killer. Diana Taurasi was a killer. But here's my point, Rob. From a nation standpoint, from when you're talking about the entirety of the nation, there are pockets, to your point about Diana and Gino and Pat Summitt. This is my opinion. There have been pockets of America and pockets of the country that have been greatly impacted by women's basketball and their coaches. And I know you can argue, well, now South Carolina's just a pocket. No, what Dawn Staley's doing right now for the game, she's not just impacting the pocket of the Southeast. Dawn Staley is transcending the game from a national perspective, and it's bleeding over to into the WNBA from her players. Again, I don't mean for that to be disrespectful to the greats, the coaches, and the players, because there's plenty of them. Plenty of them. But it goes back to me, how do you not pull for Dawn Staley, man? How do you not? Clemson fans might not admit it, but there's going to be a lot of people pulling for him tonight. 7 o'clock, hour and a half from now, South Carolina, Texas. I was at the game in Greenville, and as we pointed out earlier, it was close until about the third, I'd say midway through the third quarter, and then it wasn't close. If you missed a conversation with Chase Justice of WYFF4, he joined me at 3:20 today. If you download the free Odyssey app, Audacy, you can go back and listen to that. If you are a Lady Gamecocks fan, Chase did a great job on that interview. We keep the conversation going next. Let's hear from Todd Golden. We've got to hear from Bruce Pearl as well. A lot of audio from the coaches that are playing tomorrow night in the Final Four. We'll continue the conversation next. if you've missed anything on the show, if you just tuned in, if you just got off of work, well, good news, you can go back and listen anytime. Doesn't cost you a dime. On the free Odyssey app, AUDACY. That is how you can listen anytime. Go back and listen to anything that happened on this show, The Rob Brown Show. Again, AUDACY. A great way to listen and to turn it on and leave it on. Let's go to the phone lines to kick this segment off. The phone lines are open right now. You can get in on the conversation at 844-326-3663. Let's go to Guy. What's up, Guy?
Hey, how are you?
Wonderful, man. How are you?
Good. I go back to the 80s following women's basketball.
Wow.
And as good, well, I mean, I was lucky in college that we had a good women's program. Never, and I actually got to see Dawn Staley play. And with that in mind, Dawn Staley would have had national championships except for a team called Tennessee.
Yeah.
There was some, and to go back and look in the archives, see what their what their games were, there was a 5-year stretch when it was Tennessee, Stanford, Tennessee, Stanford, Tennessee. So Tara Vanderveer at Stanford has to be given some props too. I guess, in terms of women's basketball, going back to when did they start practicing with guys?
Oh, that's a good one.
There are a bunch of things when, I was lucky enough to see Tennessee the first year that they won their national championship. I was lucky to I was in Tennessee for a little while, got to see them practice. Pat Summitt had just had her baby, but to watch the teams back then and see where they've come to now, and again, no shortage of anything on Dawn Staley, but
sure.
There was a lot going on before her. She is definitely what is now, but then if it comes down to that game with Ariema, it'll be nice to see the past versus the present.
No, I'm with you.
That's my way in.
Hey, Guy, I will tell you this. I don't know how long it's been happening. I'm a fan of it in terms of practicing. Now, South Carolina, they use men who maybe were really, really good in high school but couldn't quite translate into college or didn't get an opportunity to play in college. Look, that's
right.
An intriguing conversation because there have been –
and they're on scholarship.
Right, and they get a ring.
Yeah.
They get a ring as well.
Yeah.
There have been people
– wow.
yeah, they do. They get a ring. They were in yellow – I don't know if you watched the last women's basketball game, but they're in yellow shirts. Tonight, if you watch South Carolina, look for yellow shirts. Hey, Guy, one question for you real quick before you run. You said for you, going back to the 80s is where for women's college basketball starts. I think my biggest point is Dawn Staley and what she's done for the game. You've seen the tremendous growth of the game, and not to discredit what other coaches and players have done, but I believe, Guy, that the sport now is on its way to being a revenue-producing sport. It's never been. And a coach like Dawn Staley, man, she deserves a ton of credit for that, in my opinion.
And you have the pockets. I mean, they still do well in Tennessee. UConn, he put UConn on the map, literally. Go back and see what the UConn team was like when he first got there.
Sure.
Ariema. Which, by the way, Ariema is also Philly. Also at no longer at Notre Dame, but I can't think of it. Their ex-coach, Philly. So
yeah.
Philly's got a connection for everybody. And then, of course, thinking Villanova's coaches. But, yeah, just my two.
Thanks, Guy. Really appreciate the phone call.
Care.
Great call as always. 844-FAN-PHONE. The phone lines are open. Hub City Spartanburgers text line, it's open. 844-326-3663. And to Guy's point, I think this is not like an old joke, but I think people who are older than me may, especially who are avid sports fans, right? They may have a recollection of women's college basketball being great that I'll never know about, that I'll never be able to say I experienced, obviously, because of my age. But I can just tell you this, before, like I said a minute ago, I was never interested prior to Dawn Staley. I am now. What's great is the more coaches, and Guy, you talk about pockets, I think the more coaches you have and the more pockets, it's only going to benefit the sport because it's gonna translate and run through all 50 states, right? Because as good as UConn was in women's college basketball, just to be quite honest with you, people in the South and in the Southeast outside of Tennessee, to your point, Guy, they probably didn't give a rip about women's college basketball. UConn's not, Connecticut's not anywhere near us, right? So they probably didn't have a vested interest, is my point. That's my point. I'm going to take a break. We have the Daily Wires coming up on the other side. We also have to get to the audio from Todd Golden, from Bruce Pearl, and your thoughts, your comments. That's all still to come next.
Of course, your adult softball beer league counts as a sport.
This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole.
No Diesel today. He's on vacation. He'll be back Monday. I'm riding solo with you for about an hour and, 15 more minutes. It's time we get to a little Daily Wires. They're the top headlines, the top stories, and what's going on in the sports world. The starting lineup. Boy, this is a depressing freaking way to kick off the Daily Wires, isn't it? Starting lineup announced tonight for your Atlanta Braves, 7:15 first pitch between Atlanta and Miami. Michael Harris, Ozzie Albies, Marcell Ozuna, Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Brian De La Cruz, Drake Baldwin, Nick Allen, Jared Kelenic, and on the mound, Spencer Schwellenbach. I know you probably think, who is Nick Allen? Who are these guys I've never heard of? Well, Drake Baldwin's in the lineup because Sean Murphy's still hurt. Nick Allen was an acquisition from the A's, I believe. Nick Allen, without looking, I think he's a young guy, young prospect. I mean, not a prospect. I'm going to guess 22 years old. Hasn't been in the majors long, and I believe started his career in Oakland. I think. I could be wrong. I've been wrong once or twice in the last 20 years. But that is your starting lineup for the Atlanta Braves. Matt Kraft says, unnecessary. Another unnecessary negative Braves comment. What did I say that was negative, Matt? What did I say? Did I say something negative? Wait a minute. Let me stop for a second. You're telling me that I can't be negative about a team that's 0-7? Are we really doing this right now, Matt Kraft? There's a team out there that's 0-7, and I'm supposed to be positive about them. Another unnecessary. Good grief. Yeah, I can't with you. They're 0-7. They're terrible. Also today, the Clemson Tigers had some news surrounding their men's basketball program, the women's basketball program as well. Let's get to that. This is credit to Grayson Mann of TigerNet.com. RJ Godfrey, you remember that name, right? He had a one-year stint at Georgia. Godfrey returning to Clemson. How funny is it that South Carolina and Clemson both getting a player back into their program that left their program and they said, okay, I'll decided I'm going to come back. So RJ Godfrey's back. He was, by the way, a serious piece in Clemson's Elite Eight run. I think he's 94 years old now. No, I'm kidding. Also, with the men's program, Clemson's front court has been reassembled a little bit this offseason, this week today, with R.J. Godfrey's return. You've got forward, center, four-star, Nick Davidson. Also, you have forward Carter Welling. All three of those, including Godfrey, are top 150 players from the portal. So, look, more work to be done, but not bad. Also, on the women's side, Sean Poppy, who just coached in his first season for the Clemson Lady Tigers, he has gotten a pretty big announcement today. Wofford guard Rachel Rose has announced that she is transferring to Clemson today, one of the top offensive options in the market. Averaged like 25, 26 a year ago not a year ago, this past season for Wofford. So pretty big pickups there. It is surprising, though. Both programs getting a player back that decided to leave the program. That's interesting. All right, what else for you on this Friday afternoon as we go through our daily wires? Obviously, the South Carolina Lady Gamecocks are in action tonight. They are playing Texas for the fourth time this season. That game tips off at 7 o'clock. UConn, UCLA, boy, you talk about a good game. Look, I think South Carolina, Texas will be good, but UConn, UCLA could be incredible. Here's what's wild about that game. Connecticut's favored by a whopping 7.5 points. And to me, that's a lot of points for UCLA to be favored by. A lot of points. It really is. And then, like I said, the Braves back home tonight. Men's basketball starting tomorrow. Clemson baseball is in action tonight. It is a late one, though, for the Clemson baseball Tigers as they are on the West Coast taking on Cal. That game, I believe, is a 9 p.m. start. Let's see if I have that right. Yes, Clemson, Cal tonight, 9 o'clock. That's 9 o'clock Eastern. So if you're a Clemson fan, you've got to stay up pretty late to watch your Tigers tonight. They will play at 5 o'clock tomorrow and then 4 o'clock on Sunday. Obviously, Clemson's off to a fantastic start this season, and they've had a great year in conference as well. 27-5 overall, 6-3 in the conference. South Carolina, on the other hand, has not had such a good year on the baseball diamond. Let's see if Paul Maneri can. This is a tough task, by the way. Let's see if Paul Maneri, who's coaching an 18-12 baseball team, who's 1-8 in the conference. Let's see if Paul Maneri can take a win from a midweek game, some momentum possibly, where they run-ruled Presbyterian, and translate that into more momentum this weekend. The Gamecocks in Starkville, Mississippi, taking on Mississippi State. What's funny is Mississippi State, they're not good either. They're also 1-8 in the SEC. So two teams that really need some wins right now. And 7 o'clock first pitch tonight for the Gamecocks, 1 o'clock first pitch tomorrow, and then the matinee Sunday, 2 o'clock first pitch, Mississippi State versus South Carolina before the Gamecocks host USC Upstate in a midweek game on Tuesday. Baseball season, man, it goes by fast. After this weekend, you want to know how many conference series South Carolina has left? I mean, I think Diesel and I talked about it yesterday or the day before. We're already to the midpoint. Maybe this weekend is the midpoint. But after this weekend, they have A&M, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Florida, Auburn, and LSU, and that's it. And the season's over. 6 more series in conference for these baseball programs. I think baseball I think it goes by quicker because they play so many games. The season's not as long anyway. I feel like college basketball, man. I don't know. It just feels like it starts so early. It might drag on a little bit. Texter says he has put the state of South Carolina and the university in a positive light. Oh, that comes from Dewey. Dewey, who are you talking about there, buddy? I don't know who you're talking about. Texter says Don Staley will join Ray Tanner, Lou Holtz, and Steve Spurrier in being the only coaches not to be fired by South Carolina. Is that right? I would like to fact check that, Texter. That's a funny text. Again, Texter says Don Staley will join Ray Tanner, Lou Holtz, and Steve Spurrier in being the only coaches not fired by South Carolina. Well, Steve Spurrier quit, and I think Lou Holtz did as well. I don't know. That would take a lot of research there, Texter, to find out the coaches that have been fired. But the softball program off to a great start as well. They're at Ole Miss this weekend. They have a really good team. South Carolina softball does. We talked about them a couple of weeks ago. A lot to get to, though, on the other side. We still have to get to Bruce Pearl audio, Todd Golden audio. We're going to look at our weekend menu in the Power Hour, the final hour of the show. Also, for you out there, the Utolos out there that want to get in on the conversation in the Power Hour, you can do so at 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. Look, it's a beautiful Friday out there. It has gotten pretty cloudy over here in Greenville. I don't know. Is it supposed to – it's not supposed to rain, is it? I mean, around midday, man, the sun was shining. It was such a beautiful day. It's gotten real cloudy all of a sudden. I think we're supposed to have another pretty day tomorrow as well. Madcraft says, are you open in the final hour? Open for what, a phone call? Absolutely. We'll stack the whole hour up with phone calls if we need to do so. Is that what you mean, though? Do you want the whole final hour to yourself, Madcraft? If so, I'll go home. Get my weekend started early. How about that? Your text on the Hub City Spartanburgers text line and phone calls. That's next. let's just cut right to the chase. One of our long-standing Tolos, Kevin, has been waiting through the break like 7 minutes on the phone lines, which are open at 844-3263-663. Let's go to Kevin, who wants to weigh in. What's up, Kevin?
What's going on, my guy?
Man, just trying to be like you. Every day I wake up, trying to be more like you.
Hey, man, being like me, man, I don't know. It's not a hard thing, man. You just got to stay in your lane and make sure you keep it in full gear, man. Don't get above 100 and keep it over 65.
I like it.
Even though doing 35 is nothing wrong with that all day. Pass me.
Hey,
pass me.
trying to be like.
I'm probably listening to y'all anyway, so go ahead and pass me.
I don't know about that. What's on your mind, man? What's on your sports docket this weekend? I mean, we got women's basketball tonight, Final Four tonight and tomorrow for the men's tomorrow. I mean, it's a good sports weekend.
Yeah, hey man, I'm just glad this is here and the way it's set up because I want to see South Carolina and UConn, man. I do, just because UConn has won so many and they stopped on from winning when she first got started.
Sure.
And then to see what she's built and how she's running things now, and then Gino being back to what Gino know back in his home. His home is the Final Four, you might well say.
Yeah.
So, like to see that, to be able to see that, and I don't want to overlook either team that they playing, but at the same time, that's what I love to see, man. That's competition. We know we're gonna get 120,000% out of everybody that's playing. Like, bro, I would really love to see that.
Kevin, my only worry with that potential matchup, is that when they played on the 16th of February, it was a 29-point game. UConn defeated South Carolina 87-58.
You know what? They was learning that. They was finding themselves. South Carolina was finding themselves.
I hope so.
All that rebounding that they gave up that they let go of last year, and all now they got a team full of just warriors now.
Yeah.
And the thing, didn't they lose to who else? They lost to
UCLA, I believe it was. They lost to Texas. They also lost to. It was UCLA. Yeah, they lost 77-62 back in November, which seems like a year ago, right?
Right, man. I'm telling you, man. Once Coach Staley look at something, man, and she loses, especially those losses, man, you go back and you find what you didn't do, or find out what really, or were they just that good? And don't get me wrong, if they meet UConn again, unless UConn just got that team that we used to seeing from UConn, this is gonna be a ball game, man. This is like playing Nick Saban twice, man. You can't do that.
Yeah. So you like him tonight against Texas? I would assume you like him tonight against Texas, right? South Carolina.
Yeah, man. Go ahead. They got to come with that defense, though, man. That last time when they beat Texas, man, they were swarming on the floor on defense, man. They was all over the place. And man, I'm telling you, man, Fulwiler.
Yeah, Fulwiler.
This if she don't leave early or nothing like that, this is about to. I want to see her put up some of the numbers that she was putting up at Keenan.
You know what's wild about that, Kevin? I said it earlier in the show. Nobody will question Dawn Staley. But I will tell you this. I've said to a lot of people, and Dawn's talked about it with Malaysia Fulwiler, who you brought up, is from South Carolina, went to Keenan High School right here in the state of South Carolina. I can tell you this, she'd be starting. I mean, she's just a high energy motor, man.
Right.
I'd love to see how many she could get if she went out there and played hero ball, you know. But she gets
anywhere else that she went, that's what she was going to do anyway.
Yeah, and she gets limited minutes, man.
Right. And you know what? Even if when she gets to the WNBA, man, she may be that sixth person of the year if they get that out. But she's probably gonna start. But I would still like I said, if I can get in the game every quarter and get about 7 minutes, and when I get in, I get to go for what I know, and I know I can go for what I know. I would love to be the sixth man. I love it.
Yeah.
No pressure on you. You just come in and let this thing fly. And then 9 times out of 10, you usually on a small. If you ain't on a heater, you at least already warm. You in the microwave at least.
Well, what about, I know it's a sensitive subject with Kevin, you being a North Carolina Tar Heel fan. What about the Final Four tomorrow night? Auburn, Florida, first game, and then the second game, Duke, your arch nemesis, versus Houston.
Hey, man, there's not been a lot of Duke players that get my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's only a few. Grant Hill,
It's
Elton
good.
Brand, Jay Will, and Cooper Flagg, man. Like,
Yeah. That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying? Like, not a lot of Duke players get my attention that, like okay, we're going to jump on Duke every time we see them. Whether we do, whether we don't, that's just how I'm thinking. But it's a few players when they play. Like, listen, that's going to be a problem every year.
Kevin, did you see where Cooper Flagg said that Grant Hill reached out to him?
I can see that. do you know where your greatness level has to be?
Imagine getting a text from Grant Hill.
Right. That's like, I forgot who it was, but there was a quarterback in college that got a text from Tom Brady after the game or something like that. But just let me get one of them. I done went and showed out, and I get this text. You know what? I might go ahead and have to go back to the gym that night because this person done text. Let me go get in the gym and make sure I perfect what I've been missing and what I'm not getting. Because for Grant Hill to hit him up, Cooper Flagg is on that level.
Look, I agree with you, and I think that just goes to show, Kevin, not to keep you forever, but like how good Cooper Flagg. Hey, listen to this. Cooper Flagg, he's being talked about as maybe the best Duke player ever. Like, and let's hold the phone. We're talking about Marvin Bagley, Shane Battier, Christian Laettner, Grant Hill, J.J. Redick, Bobby Hurley. I mean, Carlos Boozer, John Shire. The list goes on. I mean, it's absurd to think about, right? Luke Kennard, R.J. Barrett, all the players that have come through Duke, and all of a sudden, as a one-year guy and a freshman, this guy's already being compared with maybe the best.
Yes, man. And the bad part about it, he's held it up all year long. Yep. Like he's done it every game, going out and he will get up and smash that thing on you too, and try to disrespect you when he do it to you too. Like he is not one now. Him getting in the weight room, him getting his defense better, his footwork, getting all that down. He's walking. He's about. We already could be looking at the face of the NBA on the way.
Oh man, hey, look, I know you're a Tar Heel fan, but maybe this is a conversation for another day. Can we all agree?
My guy Cadeau, he transferred. Well, I'm telling you, it's just not looking good.
Kevin, can we all agree that Grant Hill's the best Duke player ever? I mean, is that an agreement or no?
All day, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I mean, there's been some good ones. I forgot Jason Tatum and Zion. I mean, it's unbelievable. But no, I think Elton Brand. I mean, it's hard to have that conversation, but I think Grant's the best.
Yeah, Grant the best thing that put on a Duke uniform. Now, I love them other boys. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But Grant Hill is not great. Because imagine Grant Hill in the NBA with no injuries, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The things Grant Hill did before the knee, before the ankle, and then the small part in Phoenix when he came back after the ankle.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, put that there. Listen, I don't like nothing that's got to do with the Blue Devils. Nothing. But Coach K and doggone Grant Hill, and I can't think of nobody on the football team Grayson Loftus is my favorite Duke football player.
There you go. I like that. It used to be Duke, right? Used to be Duke. Hey, by the way, transferred to Charlotte.
Transferred to Charlotte?
Yeah. Charlotte.
Oh, he must have got. We need to investigate this situation because after he came in and did my Tar Heels how he did us, and when he was starting his little bit of time, I felt like he was on his way.
No doubt. Thanks for the call, Kev.
All right, folks.
Always appreciate you, man. Let's do a live cut in to Dawn Staley, who's on ESPN right now. Oh man, we got the very end of it. They were interviewing Dawn Staley, women's college game day set up in Tampa, Florida. And I'll tell you this, the background you can watch, obviously. It's on ESPN. I've got it on the TV here in the studio. I see a lot of South Carolina fans out there. I see some UConn, but, boy, I see a lot of South Carolina fans out there in Tampa. That'll be interesting to see tonight. the fan base. And again, I said it in hour number one, crying Vic, right? He'll be crying and complaining that Columbia was closer to Tampa if they lose. Boy, I'd love to be there. I tell you this, man, of all the games I get to cover, I'd love to be there tonight so that if South Carolina wins in the post-game press conference, I'd raise my hand and I'd ask Vic Schaefer, I'd say, Coach, was Tampa just too close to South Carolina? Because last time you got your butt whooped in Greenville, you cried the whole press conference because they had a home court advantage. What's your excuse now? I'd love to, man. And again, Vic Schaefer has forgotten more basketball than I'll ever know, but oh my gosh, the crying is just ridiculous. Let's get to a little audio from Bruce Pearl of what he said, looking ahead to the Final Four.
We're excited about being back at the Final Four. You don't know that you're ever going to get there once in your career, so you feel incredibly blessed and grateful to have a second opportunity. Proud of our team for playing probably the most ambitious non-conference schedule we've ever played, and then have to go through the grind of playing in what was the best conference in college men's basketball in the history of the NCAA. And to be able to come out of that as a regular season champion was quite an accomplishment. The question then was, is there any more step up in your game? Because that's what you have to do in March. And I thought that through the Creighton, Michigan State games, we demonstrated that we had more in the tank.
Coach, we'll open things up on the right side of the room, just to the left of the aisle. We're going to hand that microphone.
Adam Cole, Montgomery Advertiser. Bruce, I wanted to ask you about Chad Baker-Mazara and Corey Williams. I know they're close, but I just wanted to ask you, how would you describe their relationship and just how valuable has it been for not only them, but for the program?
Well, there's a lot of aspects to coaching, and part of it is ministerial. And Coach Dye said, you could coach him as hard as you love him. Coach Dye coached him hard. Corey approaches it a little differently. He really builds relationships. He does it through faith. Time is a love language, and Corey spends time with Chad and has gotten to know him really well, and is able to help him navigate through different challenges. And when you are able to build trust in a relationship between a coach and a player, you can get through difficult things, and there's nobody that you'd rather celebrate success with than somebody that sort of helped you get through that stuff.
So that's Bruce Pearl and his press conference previewing the Final Four, I believe yesterday. Tonight, or tomorrow night, rather, Bruce Pearl will match up against Todd Golden of Florida. And let's hear what Todd Golden had to say in his opening presser, looking ahead to the Final Four.
We're joined now by head coach of the Florida Gators, Todd Golden. Coach, welcome to the Final Four.
Thank you.
We'll take an opening statement from you, then we'll get questions from our reporters in the crowd.
Obviously thrilled to be here. Really proud of our program, our staff, our players, for the way we performed all season. Made it through a heck of a SEC, best conference in basketball over the past 20 years. Obviously won the SEC tournament, which we're really proud of. And, have done what we needed to do to find a way to get to the Final Four. And, being our third year here, leading this program, myself and our staff are really pleased with the progress we've made, and excited to see what we're able to do this weekend.
We're looking for the first question for Coach Golden. We'll go to the backside on the right, and Myron.
Myron Metcalf, ESPN. Todd, you all were undefeated in November, December. Then you lose that game to Kentucky. Elijah Martin said you all needed that loss. How do you think that prepared you all to kind of regroup and get to what we've seen today?
I honestly was really as excited as you could be after a loss after that game, because, a lot of people had questioned, this is strength of schedule that we had played in non-conference, and, going on the road, playing in Rupp against a team that we knew was really good. We didn't guard necessarily well enough, but we played well in that game, and it was a back and forth. It was a great game, and I think in a way it gave us some confidence moving forward. Obviously, 3 or 4 days later, we beat Tennessee at home when they're number 1 in the country by 30. And I think that week with those 2 contests kind of explained to us and built a lot of belief within our program that we belonged, at the top of the SEC.
To the center of the room, John.
John Fanta, Fox Sports. Todd, we were talking in the locker room with a couple of your guys, and Micah said, I knew last summer that we had this type of group in terms of the close-knitness of this team. And he said it kind of says a lot about our staff because 80% of us are different transfers that have come into the program. So how do you navigate the climate to try to get the guys that you know are going to fit to the degree that this group
Come
has
on,
fit?
John.
What can you say about the way this group's
Longest
fit?
question ever.
This team, the process of kind of building this roster out started 3 years ago, when we got down to Gainesville. And, I point to Will Richard as kind of being the starting point for us. He was the first young man that committed to our program when we got the job. And, I can't say enough about what Will has done for us, as a program since he's been here. And, after the first year, we were very active, in the transfer portal, and we were fortunate enough to get Walter Clayton, to get Zion Pullen, Tyree Samuel, Micah Hand-Lockton specifically, and kind of had some unknown freshmen at the time that we got that I don't think a lot of people outside of our building appreciated. I point to Tommy and Kondo specifically with those guys and Denzel kind of growing up. And then obviously last year we had a good year, make it to the the SEC tournament championship game, but fall short in the NCAA tournament. And we felt like we needed a additional, layer of toughness, physicality, experience to kind of bridge that gap for this nucleus that we had returning. Did a great job keeping our nucleus, and then obviously just the addition of Elijah, Ruben and Sam, that group, you just really finished this team. And, we have great guys that are unselfish, that enjoy playing together. I think our staff's done a good job defining roles so everybody understands what their job is to help us win. But, it goes back to the players. They've been incredibly unselfish. They've allowed us to coach them. And they're very consistent. They compete every day. And
That's Todd Golden and his presser previewing the Final Four. Let's go to the phone lines before we run to a break, where Madcraft wants to chime in, be negative, positive. I'm not sure what to expect with this one. What's up, Madcraft? Or Mad Therapy?
No, I actually thought that was pretty interesting. I had commented earlier that of the 4 teams left, 3 of them were kind of built by transfers. They were really going into that portal. But if you look at the way Duke was built, they got a lot of those younger guys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that's
those younger guys are going to be draft picks here soon,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were top prospects for sure. But I just find it, if you go top to bottom and look at where their production has come from and just kind of see, it's just odd. It's Duke went that traditional route, kind of how I was saying about how I was defending Dabo in football.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, here's my thoughts on that. So I'm with you. I agree with you. They did go more traditional with the homegrown. However, my opinion on that is you've got 2 different styles of philosophies, right? One, hey, we're going to go get older guys like Lane and I were talking about earlier out of the portal who are 22, 23 years old. The second philosophy is I'm going to go get young guys. However, when you use that philosophy, when you go, Madcraft, to that second route, you can't just go get a random guy. You've got to have, I'm not saying you've got to have a number 1 overall pick, but you've got to have studs. Think about it like this. Think about how good you have to be as a player in today's landscape of college basketball to come straight out of high school and go straight to Duke, a blue blood, right, and start. Yeah. So, the average Joe's not doing I don't even want to say the average Joe. There are hundreds, probably thousands of really good players across the country who aren't getting recruited and looked at because they're not the 5th-year guy. They're not 22. They're not 23. The only way you can go with the route that Duke took is if you have a freaking number 1 overall pick and Concanipple coming in.
You have
Like,
certainty.
right.
Certainty.
There's
What
no
you're saying
risk
is
involved.
There's no risk.
Right.
That's the thing. There's risk involved. How you build it, there's risk. Now, but I would argue that that's exactly what I was kind of saying about Dabo.
Yep.
See, Dabo doing the same thing. He's getting his risk, and the risk is that Clemson hasn't been exactly what they needed to be.
But with Dabo, Matt, the risk hasn't paid off, right?
No, well, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So it's there's one of those situations, and you can look at that in many different ways. I just think that is a qualifying factor for me that I'm easily taking Duke all the way. I just want to put my predictions in real quick.
Yeah.
I got Auburn 81-77, and then I've got Duke, I believe I said 79-70.
Okay.
And that's what I got. I'm not going to do a prediction on the final. We'll just wait.
That's fine. So you're going Auburn to beat Florida, and you're going Duke to beat Houston. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Are you going to give me a Braves prediction on this glorious phone call?
Well, actually, what I'm going to tell you is keep the Braves name out your mouth. That's what I'm going to tell you.
Why?
No,
What? You said I was being negative.
Look. Yeah, here's what you did. Cole. You went out there and you said, all right, we're going to start off the Daily Wire, and we're going to start off, man, this is just a depressing way to start. And then you read a normal Braves lineup that we would be trotting out normally. I said, what are you talking about? You're being negative before we even step onto the field.
Mancraft are 0-7. That's why.
We'll keep on going then.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question. In all seriousness, you called Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day it was, after the Braves started like 0-3. And maybe it was Monday, right? And I was, just absolutely hitting the panic button on the season. And you said, it's 0.2%, whatever it was, and there's still so much season. After they go to L.A. and lose 3, they're now 0-7. Have your thoughts changed?
No. And do I have time? And I'll explain.
You got as much time as you want.
Well, listen. I'll explain this.
Okay.
So 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago, you remember the Braves started off great. It was a great season. We wound up going out in the first round in the postseason, I believe. I believe it may have been the Phillies.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I believe it may have been the Phillies, but I could be wrong. But anyways, I believe it was 2 years ago. We started off the season with not a great start, right? And everybody was like, "Hey, well, here they go. Here the Braves are doing the Braves thing because that's what they do, right?" And then all of a sudden, everybody started to notice that the Phillies went off on a real hot streak in the division. They had a big division lead. And we were all talking about that, but then I remember stating to everybody, look, the way the schedule worked out was that we had our hardest part of our schedule we started the season with. The Phillies started the season with the easiest schedule in MLB baseball. So they got a real good, nice start off, and everybody panicked. And then all of a sudden, we got our easy part of the schedule, and the Phillies got their hard part. And everything balanced back out.
But here's the deal, though.
But what I'm saying is that when you start the season off with two World Series.
Oh, I agree with you on that. I agree with you.
On the road, that's a hard start.
It is, but you've got to win 1 or 2 because no team that's been 0-7's ever made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
hey, look, I'll give you that. But I will say, as I stated the other day, in 2025. With bases larger and pitch count rules and torpedo bats, I would argue that we have to throw analytics like that.
So are the Braves the first team? Are the Braves going to be the first team in the history of baseball to start 0-7 and make the playoffs? Yes or no?
Yes.
Oh.
I'll tell you that would probably.
You think so? I don't think so. Matt Kraft, what if they lose 2 of the next 3 or at home against Miami?
I mean, that's fine. Hey, hold on. Now, look. Now, if we start getting into the realm of, hey, listen, hold on. Have you ever seen the movie Moneyball?
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It's a great movie. We're talking similar feats to that, but then I would question if if you saw that and thought that that was easily possible, and then notice how they built their roster, and then look at the Braves roster with our all-stars that we have in our lineup. I understand that they're not hitting right now. I understand they're not playing well for your life. But if you compare that, you're telling me that the Braves are not capable of losing another 2 games.
Well, the only difference is Moneyball's a movie that's fake, and we're talking about reality.
Wait a minute. Hold on now. Cole, you do know that that's real, right?
Okay, based on a true story is what you're saying?
Yes.
It's different. I don't know. I mean, look, I hope let me say this. I hope you're right. I hope you're right.
Look, I'm just telling you, I just don't want anybody to panic. That's all I want.
But
now, to clarify, Moneyball is based on a true story.
From the Oakland A's, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
but it is,
I don't think to be honest with you, I don't think I knew that. I don't think I knew that Moneyball is based on a true story. I really don't think I did.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. And now, I'll be honest, you need to go back and watch it now.
Okay.
It's interesting. I mean, watch it again,
Yeah.
But anywho, I appreciate you taking my call, Paul.
Absolutely, Madcraft. Hey, you're going, by the way, the Hub City, what is it? The Hub City Hog Fest, downtown Spartanburg right now. Tomorrow, you checking that out this weekend?
Oh, is that this weekend? Hey, you know what? I might.
This weekend. I think you should buy me free passes is what we should do since I'm so nice to you.
You know what? I'll look into that.
Thanks, man. Phone lines 844-326-3663. We're going to run to a break. And then on the other side, Chase Justice joined us earlier to talk Lady Gamecocks. I'll have that interview for you next. little Lady Gamecocks on this Friday. I mean, it'd be stupid if we didn't, but we go to Tampa, Florida, where we bring in Chase Justice, good friend of the show. We've had him on before, of WYFF4 here in the upstate. Chase, is the weather in Tampa? I mean, come on. I know you're probably bragging to your friends back home, but we've got 84, 85 here in the upstate today, so not too much bragging from you. Is that right?
I mean, I know 84 sounds good. It has been mid-90s here all week. It feels like summer down in the Sunshine State. And comparatively, this time last year, we went from Albany to Cleveland. It was snow, sleet, and rain heading into the Final Four. It's been nothing but sunshine and good weather from Birmingham down to Tampa. Man, no complaints from the Sunshine State.
Sunshine and good weather. Hopefully sunshine and good vibes from the Lady Gamecocks. How much going into today's matchup have you been able to see them and shoot around, talk to them, talk to Dawn Staley?
So we were able to catch about 10, 15 minutes of each team during open practice, including South Carolina. That was yesterday morning from about 9 to 9:30. They had us in here bright and early getting ready for the weekend. We were able to get a lot of access with the team through a portion of open locker room. That ran for about 30 minutes, and we got to talk to all of the key players up on the podium, from Bree Hall, Sanaya Fagan, Raven Johnson. Those three come to mind because those three are trying to become the first three-time national champs in school history. That's one of my favorite storylines heading into the weekend. But this team, they just feel loose, and it's a little bit different compared to this time last year where they were undefeated. And I've talked to some of the ladies on the team. Everybody was on edge last year. They could feel that pressure weighing them down a little bit because they wanted to be a wire-to-wire undefeated team and win that national championship. This time around, they have some blemishes on their schedule, but 3 losses. I think at this point they're 32, 33-3. So it's a wonderful team, and I think they are really excited for the task at hand.
Chase, you know, a lot of times people make a big deal, maybe rightfully so, about teams being there before, right? Having been there. Mm-hmm. South Carolina certainly has been there 5 times in a row now for Dawn Staley. Do you sense that when you watch them practice, shoot around, talk to them? Do you sense that there's a sense of calmness, I guess, because South Carolina has been there?
Absolutely. I do sense that. And we talked to Malaysia Fulwiley yesterday, and she kind of likened this experience to getting ready for the first day of school back in high school, where they know the feeling, they know what the stage and the bright lights are like, and they are just excited to get out there and hopefully get some shots going in the first couple of minutes. And comparatively on the other end, Texas, this is their first appearance in the Final Four since 2003. So 22 years where they don't really have this level of experience. Of course, their head coach, Vic Schaefer, has been at this stage before. Him and Dawn Staley met in the 2017 national championship game when he was the head coach at Mississippi State. I think we both know how that game ended. South Carolina was able to get the W there. But as far as everybody else is concerned, you do feel like South Carolina is comfortable in this stage. They're comfortable with who they are as a team, and they have been tested. They had to get past a 4-point win against Maryland and a 4-point win against Duke in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 just to get to this point. So I think they're really relishing at the opportunity to go out and compete in the Final Four.
Hey, Chase, a little fun question here. If South Carolina does take care of business tonight, is Tampa closer to Columbia or is Tampa closer to Austin? I'm just trying to figure out what the Vic Schaefer excuses might be.
I think Tampa's a little bit closer to Columbia, and that's one thing. Vic Schaefer, I feel like him and Dawn Staley, they respect one another very well. They speak glowingly about each other. They seem like they might have a little bit of a friendship going on off the court, but Dawn Staley has absolutely dominated that one-on-one matchup. I believe 15-4 all-time against Coach Schaefer, 9-0 or 7-0 in the postseason, has never lost to him in the NCAA tournament. So it's kind of a bit of a little bro type of deal, if I do say so myself.
What has Coach Staley said, Chase? What have the players said, if anything, just with this matchup tonight against Texas, it being the, 4th time this season these two teams have played?
Yes, it will be the 4th time they have played. So neither team is going to surprise the other with anything they're going to be able to throw out on the court. One sentiment that's been echoed by just about every single player in South Carolina's locker room is they need to be the team that comes out and punches first. They know what they're getting into against the game, against Texas, against the Vic Schaefer coach team. It's going to be physical through and through against the Texas Longhorns. Texas has the size advantage, But as we spoke about just a couple minutes ago, South Carolina certainly has the experience on their end. So it's all about punching first in this matchup. And I think the one thing all eyes are going to be on this time around is Madison Booker, the two-time All-American for Texas, versus Bree Hall, who always her task is to lock down the opposing team's best player. She's seen Booker 3 times this season alone. In the one game that Texas was able to beat South Carolina, Booker went for 20-plus. The other 2 games, she was held to 10 or less points. So that is going to be the one matchup that I think everybody's keying on. If Breezy can shut down Booker, it kind of has a ring of a heavyweight matchup. If she can accomplish that, I think it's going to be South Carolina rolling tonight.
You know, it could be. I think late in maybe midway through the third quarter in Greenville is when South Carolina started pulling away from Texas in the SEC championship on that Sunday. You talk about that matchup. What about Malaysia Fulwiley? I mean, you know, nobody questions Dawn Staley's rotation and adjustments, but she's someone that does come off the bench, and when she does, boy, it's a spark plug for the entire team. You've seen her in practice. You've seen her live in games as well. She's got to be, soaking this in. Second year with South Carolina. You mentioned what she was last year and how good she was last year as well. You would think a player like her might have a little bit of chip on her shoulder, even though she has been in this moment.
Absolutely. And she is one of the most polarizing women's basketball players I've ever seen in my life. And speaking to some of the other ladies on the team, when they talk about Malaysia Fulwiley, I'm pretty sure it was Raven Johnson that says she does stuff on the court that only men can do in most senses. So if she can get going in this game, it is going to be really tough to shut down South Carolina. But on the flip side, if those shots aren't falling early, we saw in the Elite Eight, I mean, this team is so multiple and so deep. If she's not on, Dawn Staley isn't scared to toss her on the bench for even an entire quarter. Yeah. So the offense, certainly when she is on the floor, it runs through Malaysia. She's the one that is the most dynamic scorer on the team. So this team, especially if they can get past Texas and into Sunday, I think Malaysia, it goes about as far as she will take them.
Will it be in the fourth matchup, Chase? Has there been anything said from South Carolina, whether it be players or coaches, in terms of what they might try to do different? I mean, these two teams know each other pretty well at this point.
I think it's going to be – I haven't gotten the sense that either team is going to throw anything crazy out at the other team. I think it's really just both teams trying to impose their will and play their style of basketball. But we did get the chance to speak to some ESPN talent yesterday, talk to them about the game. We spoke to Rebecca Lobo, who's going to be on the call tonight, Carolyn Peck, who has been on the call, I believe, every single game that South Carolina has been in the tournament up to this point. And they both said in the fourth time playing against one another, liken it to in the WNBA when you're in the championship game, it's tough. And sometimes it doesn't equate to the most fun brand of basketball from a fan sense. Both of those women kind of gave me the sense that this is probably going to be a low-scoring game. Don't expect anything too flashy, any points to be in the 70s, even 80s. They both kind of said if it's a 40 to 45 game in the fourth quarter with time winding down, that's about what they're expecting out of this one.
Chase, what about Chloe Kitts? Chloe Kitts is always a different player to me in every single few minutes of every game. What I mean by that is not calling her inconsistent, but at times this year she has, found herself going a couple of quarters without finding points. She's averaging 10 a game. Now, you go back to the SEC tournament, a couple of those games, Chloe Kitts was the catalyst in the fourth quarter that was able to bring things home for the Gamecocks. What has she said leading into this game that really makes you and other South Carolina Gamecock fans out there believe that if she shows up once again like she did in Greenville, that tonight could be similar to what happened on that Sunday in Greenville?
I think Chloe Kitts has a newfound confidence about her, and I spoke to her about that in Birmingham last weekend. And she said that after the UConn game, which I think she had 6 points, 4 rebounds in that game. It wasn't a total wash, but they lost to UConn by close to 30 points. They ran them out of Colonial Life Arena. She said after that game, she gathered her team up and apologized to each player individually and said, hey, look, this loss is on me. I'm going to turn a page at this point. This is going to be a different Chloe Kitts. And I think that's exactly what we've seen down the stretch. She has turned into one of the most dynamic scorers on this team. She's been a bully down low. If she can get to a double-double, which she's done in, I believe, 7 of the past 13 or 14 games, she's been on a heater as of late. Chloe Kitts is a tough player to stop, and especially when you're as multiple as you are on defense, they can take her out. They can put fresh legs in the third and fourth quarter. It's not like she's going to have to play the entirety of the game and be gassed going into the fourth quarter. So just the rotation and the players that they can put in and out, it kind of complements Chloe's game. And if she can get to the foul line a couple times, we can see if she can knock down some shots there too.
Chase, has there been anything said about South Carolina's path to get here? Because when the tournament was announced, Dawn Staley was a little bit upset about not being the number 1 overall seed. However, from my standpoint, in my opinion, they definitely got the best draw. They UConn's on the other side of the bracket, UCLA on the other side of the bracket, LSU on the other side of the bracket. I just wonder if now that Dawn has played the games that she's played, no offense to the Dukes of the world and the teams that South Carolina has played, but if she's said anything and commented on their path that maybe might have been a little easier.
I don't think so. She hasn't said anything of the sort, at least to us at this point. But like you said, I don't think many fans and many players outside of their locker room, they knew what they were getting into in Birmingham. But I don't think many fans outside of the locker room were expecting as close of games as South Carolina got. I mean, even dating back to the round of 32 against Indiana, that game was close up until the third or fourth quarter. So South Carolina certainly battle-tested at this point in the tournament. And when you look around at the other 3 teams, including Texas, that are left in the Final Four alongside South Carolina, all 3 teams that South Carolina has lost to this season. So no easy wins at this point in the tournament. But, I mean, as far as the road to the title goes, when you take a step back and look at it, you do think that South Carolina got a bit of a favorable draw, at least up to this point. But now round 4 against Texas, it's hard to beat a team twice. We're going to have to see if South Carolina can beat them 3 times this season.
Chase, you mentioned Booker on the Longhorns team, a phenomenal player. Do you get the sense that Booker tonight, with South Carolina's depth, that Booker almost has to go on I don't want to say an all-time great performance, but that Booker, that the weight really is on her shoulders more than it is in any other game, because Texas just doesn't have, no team has the depth that South Carolina has.
Certainly. And I will go out and say, I think Booker is going to have a legacy game, 20, 25 plus, if they hope to shut down South Carolina. That's what it took a couple of years ago when South Carolina lost to Iowa at this stage. It took Caitlin Clark showing up and just being the most dominant player on the court, hands down. So if Booker's getting her shots up and she is finding them to fall, that's going to be something that could give South Carolina some issues, because as dominant and as deep as the Gamecocks are, the one thing that I've kind of pointed to down the stretch is when they need a bucket, they have so many good players that are able to take open shots, but they don't really have one player individually, unless Full Wiley is on and she's knocking down threes, that they will force feed the ball to and say, look, you have to bail us out. You have to give us a shot. It was Joyce Edwards throughout a majority of the regular season, but we've seen her kind of take a backseat in the tournament, which for an 18-year-old true freshman, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world. But for Madison Booker, 2-time All-American, first-team All-American this season, it is going to start and end with her as far as the Texas Longhorns tournament hopes are concerned.
about this stat, this tweet that I just came across not too long ago from Bob Nightingale, who, believe it or not, we've had on the show today. Not today. We've had on the show before. Bob Nightingale of USA Today, Major League Baseball columnist. A great interview, by the way. It's been about a year, maybe 10 or 11 months since we last had Bob on, so we'll have to try to get him on again soon. A fantastic guest. But to close the show today, wanted to bring this tweet to you, Tolos, because this is just unbelievably impressive if you're a baseball guy. This comes from Bob Nightingale on Twitter, on X. Aaron Judge, says the tweet. Aaron Judge now has 321 homers in his first 1,000 games as a Yankee. If you didn't catch that, I'll read it again. Aaron Judge now has 321 homers in his first 1,000 games as a Yankee. Babe Ruth had exactly 321 homers in his first 1,000 games as a Yankee. So when you talk about the all-time greats, especially someone to the caliber of Babe Ruth's caliber, think about that. Through their first 1,000 games as a Yankee, both have had 321 home runs. You say, Cole, that it's easier to hit home runs nowadays. It's, more often. Well, it looks still impressive. Aaron Judge has 6 homers with 17 RBIs through the Yankees' first 7 games this year. And both players through their age 32 season at 32 years old. The statistics, man, pretty unbelievable. Slugging percentage, Babe Ruth had a 709 compared to Aaron Judge's 604. Batting average, Babe Ruth was a little better, 349 to 288. But, man, you're talking about the best hitter on the planet, man. It's not bad company to be in if you are Aaron Judge. Tolos, I have enjoyed the heck out of today's show. Appreciate you riding along with me as I have been solo today. Diesel will be back on Monday from his vacation. Want to say thanks to Chase Justice of WYFF4 for hopping on with us to talk a little Lady Gamecocks. Also thanks to Lane Fowler, the head boys basketball coach at Burns. He spent the entire hour with me from 4 to 5. And, man, I'll tell you what. That was probably my favorite hour of radio that I've done in a long, long time. Because I was just shut up. I was quiet. Let the expert and Lane Fowler do the talking. And if you missed that, I will tell you, I had so many texts after that interview or that segment, or that hour, rather. You need to go back on the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and check it out. I also posted the link to it on my Twitter. You can check it out at The Cole Bryson. That's at The Cole Bryson. That's my Twitter. That's my X. If you haven't done so already, give me a follow. That way we can stay connected during the weekend when we're not on the radio. Madcraft says 100%. That was a great segment. 3 great segments with Lane. It was really good, man. So knowledgeable. We'll see you Monday.